on one second, let me see. Commissioner Bowman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect, thank you. We'll get started in
Okay.
just a few minutes.
Welcome, everybody. We'll get started in just one moment. Ms. Bradshaw, are we all set up with the Zoom? Commissioner Bowman, Commissioner Goins, can you hear us okay?
Yes, JC, just fine.
Yes.
Great. The Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, June 1st, 2022 is now called to order. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Attorney, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. You'll notice we have two commissioners joining us virtually. During the meeting, a designated staff person will run the Zoom aspect of the meeting so each commissioner can focus on the meeting rather than the technology. If at any time during the meeting a commission member gets disconnected, the meeting will briefly pause to give them time to return. All matters requiring commission action shall be presented to the Planning Commission by the planning staff and the applicant. In situations where planning staff is the applicant, there will be only one presentation. City staff will make the first presentation, and the applicant will make the second presentation. Both presentations are limited to 5 minutes. To maintain an orderly meeting, all presentations shall proceed without interruption unless the commission desires to intervene with questions or comments. The chair will open the public hearing for those physically present wishing to speak about an item. Those in favor of an item shall be heard first, followed by those opposed to an item. A 10-minute time limit will be allowed for public comment in favor, and a 10-minute time limit will be allowed for public comment in opposition to the item. A staff member will track the 10-minute time periods. Who's our timekeeper this evening? Mr. Satterfield? Thank you. He will track the 10-minute time periods and raise his hand at the 5-minute mark, the 1-minute mark, and verbally call time when it expires. The chair, in their discretion, may extend these time periods. All groups, organizations, neighborhoods, or similar associations desiring to comment are asked to appoint one spokesperson to represent their concerns or point of view to the commission on each agenda item. The public has been encouraged to submit their comments in writing via a web-based form located on the City of Wilmington's website. All comments received before 3 p.m. today were forwarded unedited to the Planning Commission. All comments received will be delivered to City Council when the action item advances. All comments received will be made available to the public if requested. All of our votes this evening will be roll call votes after proper motions are made and consistency statements read into the record. The chair will state the outcome of the vote and the action. Rezoning requests that receive an unfavorable recommendation from the Planning Commission may be appealed by the applicant to the Wilmington City Council. Appeals should be in the form of a letter submitted to the city clerk within 10 days of this hearing. Any appeals and all items approved tonight will be heard tentatively at the July 19th, 2022 City Council meeting. Commissioners, you had the minutes from May 4th in your packet. Are there any changes?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move approval of the minutes.
Commissioner Lennon has moved approval of the minutes, and we do have a second? Second by Commissioner Pollack, and on this one we will take a voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes from May 4th to 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes from May 4th are approved. All right, for our first item this evening, we have a conditional district rezoning for property containing 8.76 acres located at 239, 245, 251, and 261 Giles Avenue, and 255 and 257 Piper Avenue, from R15 moderate density single dwelling District to R5CD, Medium Density Mixed Residential District, to allow 61-unit residential development with duplex, triplex, and quadruplex units. And Mr. Chambers will be presenting for the staff.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Forgive me while I figure out how to move our slides. Okay, I think I got it. This site is located south of Oleander Drive off of Pfeiffer Avenue and along an unimproved portion of Giles Avenue between Pfeiffer and Bagley Avenue. The site is approximately 9 acres in size. It's currently vacant. This map shows the site within the context of the surrounding area. The Greenville Village Mobile Home Park is located to the south. You see Summer Walk at the corner of Oleander and Greenville Loop Road. We have some photos of the subject property. We're looking north on Pfeiffer on the top left, looking south at the end of Pfeiffer on the top right. The bottom left will be looking from Pfeiffer down the existing variable width right-of-way, and the bottom right would be looking from the other end of that right-of-way back at Pfeiffer. The site is surrounded by single dwelling uses to the east and west and manufactured housing parks to the north and south. The subject parcels were originally platted as part of the Bradley Heights subdivision, which was recorded back in 1948. The applicant proposes to rezone this site from R15 to an R5 conditional district for a 61-unit residential development. The applicant proposes to develop a portion of the site utilizing the standard R5 development standards and a portion of the site utilizing our courtyard development standards. The R5 portion of the project includes 6 duplexes, 3 triplexes, and 1 quadruplex. And then the courtyard style portion of the project includes 6 duplexes and 6 quadruplexes. The applicant has set aside a portion of the site for future development while additional opportunities for access and connectivity are being explored, and that would be the area on the top left in orange. Any future use of that area would require a conditional district modification, which would require that project to come back before you and City Council. Access to the site will be provided by 2 connections to Pfeiffer, one at the southwest corner via an existing variable width right-of-way, which will be here, the bottom right of your screen, and one via a new public right-of-way that provides a new connection between Pfeiffer and the improved Giles Avenue. Traffic data indicates that Pfeiffer is currently operating within its design capacity. The estimated trip generation indicates that the proposal would result in a minimal increase in estimated peak hour trips when compared to the maximum build-out under current zoning. The proposed intensity development would not trigger a traffic impact analysis. The applicant proposes to improve portions of Giles Avenue adjacent to their property with a street cross-section that includes vertical curb, 20 feet of pavement width, plaza, and sidewalk along the east side of the street. The unimproved right-of-way at the end of Giles Avenue would be improved with a street cross-section that includes curbing and 20 feet of pavement width. And then the proposed new public right-of-way would include vertical curb, 20 feet of pavement width, plazas, and sidewalks along both sides of the street. The site is located within a greenfield site multi-use place area of opportunity. The comprehensive plan supports infill that is consistent and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The plan calls for new development to provide appropriate transitions between varying development types and densities, and the plan supports the completion and extension of the existing street network. Staff believes the proposal is compatible with the surrounding development pattern. The project would provide additional housing options that would serve as an appropriate transition between the adjacent manufactured housing development and the surrounding residential neighborhood. Staff believes this request is consistent with our comprehensive plan, that the request is reasonable in the public interest, and is recommending conditional approval subject to the conditions included in the case summary. That's all we have. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is prepared to make a presentation as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this time?
I do.
Commissioner Pollack?
Yeah, Brian, back on where you do the case overview proposal analysis, and it's the items where you say on May 5th, I'm just looking for clarification.
Commissioner Pollack, can you move a little closer to your mic?
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Never had that problem. Sorry, guys.
I can hear you fine from here, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but
Okay. It says on May 5th, 2021, it says, "The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval." And then it says, "During the Planning Commission public hearing, an adjacent," so I'm assuming the same meeting, "item was postponed based on something that a property owner brought up and ultimately withdrawn." So was it really approved, or, you know where I'm going? I mean,
Right, the planning commission recommended approval.
Yeah.
It did not go to city council because of the issue with the access. The property owner did not agree to what was being proposed. And since that, and that access is located at the bottom left of your screen, that was the original place where they were going to come in.
Okay.
Since that time, the applicant has purchased additional property to provide a brand-new access that avoids that
Okay.
conflict altogether.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lennon?
But I had to think about it, but I was at that meeting. My recollection, though, was that as far as the project goes, we were fine. There was an issue that wasn't really up to this panel to speak to in regards to the access. Was that
That's right, it was illegal.
fair recollection?
It was a legal issue, and our city, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, our attorney's office was not comfortable taking it to the council unless that issue was resolved. And it never got resolved, so they just went a different route.
But we voted for it 7-0.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I can check the mic
Okay,
levels.
well, our AV guy is right here at the podium, so he'll check when he gets back. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Bowman?
Yes, Mr. Chambers, as I look at the very back of my packet on this item, attachment 6, it shows the courtyard cottages arranged in 3 separate courtyards. And I think the last segment of that is to be held in reserve for future development based on your slide, which showed the area in yellow as future.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a
All right,
question.
Commissioner Sharp?
Is it usual that a parcel is divided up for proposal now and other portions of it be held in reserve rather than being planned all as one unit?
It's not typical, but they don't want to bring something forward for that area until they have explored all options for access and interconnectivity, so they didn't want to give the false impression that they were going to build it at this time. So they just left it off completely. They want to be clear with everyone out there that they're not going to develop it, and if they did, they would have to come back to the process. So they just pulled it off. It's not typical, but it's not completely out of the ordinary, I wouldn't think.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lennon?
Just to speak to that point, I would respectfully argue it is fairly common to have areas of future development in a larger scale project, because you also want to make sure the market absorbs the product, so.
That's
but-
correct. I think that's, in my mind, it's more of a larger scale, multi-phased, 20-year. That's where my head's at. So I apologize if I'm responding in that kind of headspace.
Gotcha, but you made it clear they have to come back through the
Correct.
process. Right.
They'll come back before this commission and city council if this ultimately gets approved, and then ultimately if they wanted to develop that portion of the property.
Thanks.
All right, any more questions for staff at this time? All right, thank you, Mr. Chambers, and we'll let you check out our audio, and it sounds like we're getting a little bit louder, though,
I
somehow
will try
magically.
not to let you down.
And we'll bring the applicant up for the applicant presentation.
We did increase the microphones a little bit, so you may have to adjust how close or how far you are to your microphone, but I know Mr. Lennon and Mr. Sharp both need to be pretty close.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name's Sam Frank. I represent the applicant. With me this evening are Ross Tomaselli and Joel Tomaselli, both representatives of the landowner who is the applicant, Josh Mahaley, our land planner and landscape architect, Frank Smith, our architect, and Jeremy Blair with Paramount Engineering. I'm going to do my very best to get up and down in 5 minutes. If we fail to do so, I'd ask for a little bit of leniency and perhaps to cut into the time for comments in favor of the application. If you say no, of course, we'll stop talking at 5 minutes when you tell us to.
We'll let you know when it's up, and you can just let us know how much you have left. So I don't.
That sounds good.
Some items take a little longer to explain than others. This is a very unique property, so.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. This is an integrated infill development that will provide exactly the type of housing that the city desperately needs to address the missing middle in our diversity of housing options. You considered this plan previously. You're familiar with it. Commissioner Pollack, you understand correctly that you looked at it a year ago. Two primary factors led us to pull the plug on that prior application and present a new one to you. First, the code has evolved since then. The opportunity to utilize courtyard-style development is better under the revised code than it was a year ago. Second, and significantly, our client was able to acquire some additional land between the primary portion of the site and Pfeiffer Avenue. What that allows us to do is to expand the site in a minor fashion, but more importantly, to establish a new public right-of-way across land that we own and eliminate any question about the sufficiency of that primary access way. The project evolved significantly over the course of that year based on feedback from staff and cooperation with staff. Of course, we also held a community meeting. You're aware of that and have a report regarding the community meeting in the write-up from staff. The project at the time it was proposed for the community meeting included 77 units. Since it has been reduced to include 61 and a potential future development parcel. Commissioner Sharp, you're exactly right. It would be easier for us to simply ask for approval of improvements on that section of the site. For the reasons already explained, we decided to pull it back and accept the burden of coming back to you should we decide to develop that additional tract in the future. That gives the city more time to decide what, if anything, it wants to do with the remainder of Giles Avenue. It also gives the city the opportunity to see us do what we said we were going to do, which is to develop an attractive and high-quality housing product in this location. I'd like to invite Frank Smith and Josh Mahaley to tell you a little bit about the vertical design of the project.
Good evening, members of City Planning. My name is Josh Mahaley. I was here before this board a little over a year ago with a different plan. I represent Risotto Properties. But this project is for 8.76 acres. It's a little bit more than it was when we were here last time. It is currently R15. We propose to do R5 CD. This plan utilizes a mix of newly adopted ordinance in R5 duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes, as well as a portion of the courtyard development standard. So it's a hybrid plan. Historically, this area was part of the Bradley Heights subdivision. The area is a mix of R15 single-family lots and manufactured homes to the north and south. Giles Avenue is an existing 30-foot wide right-of-way that runs along the western side of the tract and eventually intersects into Oleander Drive. Giles Avenue is mostly unimproved at this time. We are planning on improving a portion of this in front of the property. How do we advance this?
How do we get to the next slide?
Okay. In the project summary, we've got 36 courtyard units and 25 duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes. We feel that this project is compatible with the adjacent land uses, improves existing Giles Avenue right-of-way. This area is identified at the city as an area of opportunity in the future land use plan. Some of the recommendations for these areas are the preservation of natural area, appropriate transitions between varying development types and densities, to make connections to adjacent areas and incorporate them into infill development, provide for open space and buffers, develop multi-use areas, provide multi-model connections between these uses, ensure a walkable block structure, and encourage a variety of building types and employ new and traditional urban design principles. I think you'll find that this plan does exactly that. We provided a mix of unit types We provided a suitable connection and right-of-way to the existing right-of-way. We're improving a portion of the right-of-way, and we're also improving that right-of-way to be walkable with sidewalks on both sides of the street and plazas for street lights and trees. We've worked many of the design elements in the plan before you tonight. I'm going to let Frank come up and talk a little bit about the architecture and the visioning for the project.
Just so everyone knows, my clock shows for 15 seconds of the 5 minutes.
Okay.
So maybe you can go ahead and request your time for extension now.
So requested.
How's another 3 minutes? Does that work?
That'd be delightful. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll keep it brief because they've stolen much of the thunder already and done a great job. The staff has done a great job. First, I'd take some of the time to thank the members of the commission for the time that you spend of your life doing this. I've done it myself, and sometimes it's not always appreciated by everyone, but I, for one, appreciate what you do. And also the staff, the city and the staff be commended on the new LDC because it's a great final product and it's good change. As Josh mentioned, we've used that to develop the courtyard scheme, and a new little twist was to use the townhouses, trying to get it as attainable and as possible. The courtyards also, I believe, create opportunities for open and community space, to create a sense of community, also to preserve trees. That's also an effort that we're working really hard to do. Save as much of the existing tree canopy as possible. We took a little bit of our artistic licensing with the renderings because if we left all the trees there, you wouldn't be able to see the buildings. But the architecture itself, we're trying to keep it at small and cottage scale. We have some representative plans. These are certainly conceptual and not final, pending moving forward with a little bit of more marketing study. But we're trying to keep them as small footprints as possible so we don't have massive buildings. And I'm going to leave it at that. We do think that we've got a series of 3 of these courtyards. Ultimately, we did with the piece that was to the north that was left off, completed one of these courtyards, but as reasons mentioned, for the future of Giles and access and traffic and all those things, I think it's better, everybody felt that it was better to hold back a little bit and just see how things play out rather than try and force too much in there. And that I will turn it over to Frank.
Thank you. Consistent with the comp plan, provides what is essential in the city for housing to address the missing middle, and integrates very well with the existing single family on either side and the mobile home parks located to the north and the south. We'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have of us.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at this time?
I do.
Commissioner Sharp?
For those units in the courtyard arrangement, where is the parking for the residents then?
Let me ask one of our designers to come up and answer your question, if I could.
So I see 3 courtyards with structures around 3 sides. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, the ones along Giles Avenue, the parking, I don't know if I can zoom in on this or not, but the parking for these units are on the side off of this alley. According to the current LDC, you're not allowed to park adjacent, more than 50% adjacent to the units. So the parking is pushed to the rear, and everyone walks through the courtyard or through the alley to get to their unit. These have parking spaces adjacent to them. So the 1-bedrooms, there is parking here and here. May not show it very well, but there is, we're trying to, oh, there it is. Thank you. I'm trying.
That helps. Thank you.
a little bit more helpful. Currently, as designed, I've lost the cursor, there it is. The one-bedroom units that all face the courtyard, they actually have backyards on the alley currently, with the parking in this area, in the corner of the units and across the back. We want to minimize the ones across the back, of course, and we may shuffle those around to save as many trees as possible.
So there's not, in the back of the units, those aren't driveways, those are yards?
That's correct.
Okay. Sorry, we get little tiny site plans, so we can't read all the notes on them sometimes.
I
So that's where
understand.
some of the questions are coming from.
I can understand. But currently, the ordinance designates that, I'm repeating myself, that 50% of the parking cannot be adjacent to the units in the courtyard development standards. So we've moved the 50% back to the rear drive, to the rear alley.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Pollack?
Excuse me. Road improvements, staying on this diagram, if you could just come up and show Giles and the other street, because I was out there the other day and I realized I can only drive up to a certain point. What piece of these roads are you proposing you're going to improve? Because some of these are, unimproved roadways.
So what you see here for Giles Avenue, from the point of my cursor south to this location, and then the variable width right-of-way that's otherwise unnamed between Pfeiffer and Giles, will be improved at the cost of the developer and then accepted by the city as public right-of-way.
So again, the access into and out of the complex is really going to be,
Sorry, I
No,
didn't
that's
mean
fine.
to skip that. We also have, of course, the new public right-of-way here across the property and through the site.
so that's going to be the main in and out.
Yes, sir.
So for emergency vehicles, et cetera, that's how they're going to enter the,
There is an additional one here to the south so that you've got redundancy for emergency vehicles in the event for some reason this was blocked,
Okay.
which is, I believe, is why you require it. But yes, this is the primary point of access for emergency vehicles and for vehicles on the daily.
so okay. My second question is, putting the amount, where'd we go? Here we are. You add, what are you looking for, 61 units, whatever that population is, whatever that traffic is. I would like your view on how that impacts getting in and out to Oleander and, the traffic that it may now create, as to getting onto Oleander. I'd appreciate your thoughts on that.
So the project didn't generate enough trips to require an entire TIA, but we did a trip generation report. The difference in traffic generation on Pfeiffer Avenue for this proposal versus R15 development, the by right development on the same site, at the peak hour is one additional car every 15 minutes.
Interesting. Okay, I'll hold for now. Thanks.
Sure.
Do you have something to add to the question, the
Yeah, I
answer?
just want to add to that, the plan that's before you tonight, we've had some pretty extensive meetings with staff and others on this plan. And to answer your question about Oleander, because it did come up. It came up in the community meeting. It came up with staff. Because there's with the school there is some peak AM and mostly in the AM school drop-off. The turn on the Oleander came up, and it's one of the reasons that we have pulled back on this plan. Our plan is eventually to connect through, but that's not available to us right now to connect Giles Avenue out to Oleander. And I don't know if we need to really get into that, but there's a reason that we pulled back to this number of units that's before you tonight was mostly due to that traffic issue, which you mentioned about the turn onto Oleander. So, and a lot of those conversations, regarding that had to do with sort of finding what we felt was the right number of units and a good balance to what we could put there currently prior to being able to make those improvements. So maybe that helps answer that question.
Commissioner Sharp?
I have a question for our attorney. When's the appropriate time for that?
Let's do that during the deliberations.
Right.
All right, any more questions for the applicant? Commissioner Lennon?
So the difference in traffic, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly and for the benefit of others too. By right, currently, you could put 25 houses there on that piece of land. Is that?
8 acres, 15.
That's what the estimated trip generation says?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. So what's the average size of these homes in your project, the 61 homes?
Yeah, Frank could probably answer that a little better, but we have a mix of a lot of these are 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and I think there's maybe a couple 3s, but we're talking about mostly 1 and 2-bedroom units as opposed to what you'd find in like a R15, 3, 4-bedroom units, which tends to run the traffic counts much higher. So that's,
Which is exactly where I was going. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So larger house, more cars, more
Sure.
bedrooms, more people.
Yeah.
Okay.
We the mix of these units is generally towards to cater probably to non-families. These are probably would be, people with 2 cars at the most. Maybe a lot of these places might just have 1 car. The parking distribution, works well. Like Frank said, the ordinance does not allow us to park behind the units, but I think that there's some pending code changes coming that, that might change, and if that changes, we're probably going to end up pushing the cars behind the units because we think it works better and makes sense, and that wouldn't affect our plan. We made sure of that. So if that code changes, we're probably going to push the parking behind the units into driveways, which will essentially save more trees on the plan than what we're showing now, because we won't need those parking lots, and it'll add more buffer to that plan north there where we have all those parking spaces shown. Up here, we'll essentially hopefully make those go away and put the cars here. So, but we can't do that right now with the current code, but like I said, it will not affect any approvals that we receive on this from as far as our entitlements go.
But moving those cars doesn't change the number of cars?
No, sir, it does not.
Okay.
It's still, we're still required to have, for the R5 lots, we're required to have 2 cars for a 2-bedroom unit. So and then a 1-bedroom unit is 1.5, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We will
Thank you.
open the public hearing for agenda item number 1, and we'll start with anyone who's here to speak in favor of this item. Anyone here to speak in favor of item number 1? Okay, anyone who is here to speak in opposition of item number 1? And make sure you've signed in and start with your name and your address, and we will get the timekeeper going.
Good evening. My name is Neil Schulman, and I'm going to ask for some indulgence as well because there's a lot of things that I think need to be set straight that's just been said here. I'd like to give you the history of Old Giles Road. It was originally called Old Church Road, and if you know where the animal hospital is there, that's where the church was. It went from there all the way to Oleander Drive. Now, if you walk down through there, it was changed, by the way, to Old Giles Road when Giles jumped across Oleander Drive after the church burned down. If you walk down the entire road, the first thing you're going to find is several structures, including one owned by a New Hanover County building inspector, where he lives. You go a little further, you come to two more structures, which is a mobile home park. Then you're going to find a private road that was Old Giles Road, but now he's held it for 20 years. He owns it by, because he held it. Now you go a little further, and then you come to their area that they're talking about. Now, if you see where the unimproved right-of-way they're talking about coming in from Pfeiffer, that road went straight all the way to Oleander, Greenville Loop Road. But there's another mobile home that parked there with approximately 250 units there. Well, that property owner is already having problems from what's already going on out there with water, and that unimproved right-of-way, part of it is in a ditch, and part of it goes behind his fence. So the city's not going to go after that one and say we need to get that back because they haven't done anybody else. Otherwise, it's discriminatory. Now let's go a little further. It's 20 feet barely. How are you going to build a road in there to be able to have this many people? You're talking about doubling the density. And as far as the thing, oh, you only have one car, that's bull. That's plain baloney. Because for the last 2 weeks, I've been going there twice a day, specifically because I want to see if they're going to survey it. I have never been able to get out on Oleander in less than 15 minutes. And there's always another car or two there waiting to go that same way. In the morning, it may be 30 minutes. You have a school going into that, in that trailer park. You're talking about raising the density by double the capacity. Now, the last meeting that we were at, they didn't just withdraw it. They were told, you might want to ask for continuance, or we may very well deny your application. So we don't even know what's going on to this point. Let's go one step back. They had a meeting. In the meeting, we talked about buffers. We told them we wanted curbing against our properties. We're not interested in, most people out there don't care about another entrance. But if we want one, we'll be sure to tell you so you can put one in. But we don't know what they're doing. And to be honest, either do you. Because these plans haven't been finalized. Now, how are they going to get in if there's an emergency on that road on Pfeiffer? You have a 20-foot entrance that I don't believe a fire engine can turn. Now, if you've driven on Pfeiffer, and by the way, the original name of that road was Piper Lane, because that's where John Calusi used to land his plane. It was runway. Very strange area. So if you have two trucks coming down Pfeiffer, you are almost in the ditches because it's so narrow. So how are 100 and some people going to drive in and out of there every day? Please tell me. Please tell me how this is not going to be a burden to the neighborhood and to them. And when they told us in the last meeting, well, it's going to be a pedestrian community. Where are they going to walk through to? Are they going to walk through the woods? I don't think so. Are they going to walk down Pfeiffer? Only if they have a death wish. So please think about what we're doing here. All these designs that they're throwing out, we don't know if they're not done. We don't know. We have no idea as neighbors what they're doing. None. And the only reason they went and surveyed that and showed it to us was because of me. I insisted on it. I said, you don't know where this right-of-way is. And I was right, because it's on Greenville Village's property area. He's held it for 20 years. And then there's a ditch. Then the ditch supposedly is owned by the city of Wilmington. So where is that? That's not on the map. So there's too many unknowns with this. I don't think this board should do anything but send them back to get the first part done, so the design is known and they actually tell the neighbors what they're going to do. And so we then can either agree to it or argue about it some more. I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, they don't like to let us come up here and rebut, especially Mr. Frank. He doesn't like that at all. But we need to, we the people, we live there. I don't live there, it's rental property area for me. But everybody who lives out there, they want a nice neighborhood. Putting this many people out there is not going to be. What this is going to be is another prime play towing contract. Just like Progress 910, just like the cottages, just like Red Point. Those places, by the way, Progress 910, that has the most amount of police calls in all of Wilmington. More than Creekwood, more than downtown, more than Dawson Street. So please think about the density before you say yes. And I don't know if you have any questions for me or not.
Thank you. How are we doing on time, Mr. Satterfield?
2 minutes and 58 seconds.
All right. Do we have anyone else here to speak in opposition of item number 1?
Hi, my name is Eugenie Daniels, and I live at 235 Pfeiffer Avenue, and I've been living there for many, many years when it was sort of a gravelish dirt road. But anyway, the gentleman ahead of me is correct. I've lived there all these years. My neighbor with me has lived there all these years, and a lot of people on that road have been there a lot of years, and the density problem is a problem. If you want to get out of Pfeiffer Avenue onto Oleander and you want to go to town, sometimes we have to turn right and go down and get the light and get in the left lane and turn and make us, we don't even make a U-turn, we go on over through part of the little Seagate area and come back. We can't get out there. The roads there have been terrible for a long time, and he's right there narrow, and it's hard to get in and out there. We have a motorhome, and I know when we try to turn in that driveway off of Oleander, it takes a lot of space, so it's going to take a fire truck and all of anything big like that, a lot of room to get in. And far as the amount of people in that area, there's a school down there and high density when they come in and out. And every morning you might as well be looking at Oleander or some of the College Road from the traffic that comes in and out then. And that trailer park with those 250 plus trailers in it, those people have access to Greenville Loop Road to come out. But it's an easier shot for them to come down Pfeiffer and hit Oleander than it is to get in the Greenville Loop Road traffic if you've ever been in and out of it in an afternoon or early morning. So we have all that down there, and there's another little development down there. I don't know exactly, can't recall the Emerald Court, I believe it is, that has several houses in it, and they're fixing to build several more units across the street from us. I think 4 or 5 is going in there. And I don't see how we can really control and use Pfeiffer Avenue for any more people. It's just not feasible. And I do agree with the gentleman on a lot of what he said. And we see it every day. So there is a lot of traffic. The road is narrow. And if you don't watch it, if you're going to the mailbox, you better look where you're going, because you can not stump your toe, you can just about catch your toe in a hole. And it's been like that. Nobody has really cared a whole lot about keeping that area up. And I know they don't want to come in on Giles Avenue, and I know there's some little problems there, but there's a lot of problems on Pfeiffer too. Thank you.
Thank you.
15 seconds.
If we do have someone else who wants to speak in opposition, I'll extend it a little bit since I did that for the applicant. But anyone else here to speak in opposition? Anyone else here to speak on this item at all? Well, I was going to extend it if we had someone new to speak, so, but you've already had your turn, so we'll move on to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, if you forgive me, I need to say something lawyerly briefly.
Lawyerly, is that your word?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah. You heard testimony from folks in opposition talking about technical traffic data, talking about technical survey details. Neither of the folks who presented information to you offered any credentials. I must respectfully object to your consideration of expert testimony offered by someone who was not qualified as an expert. Thank you.
Okay. I thought you were popping back up to do your rebuttal, the applicant rebuttal, so is that not part of it?
And Madam Chair, just as a reminder, while Mr. Frank's coming back up, it's a legislative hearing, so we don't really have a record or evidence here, but just for your knowledge.
We don't have a what?
There's no evidence presented. It's a legislative hearing.
Oh, right.
We
Yeah, it's just
don't
a
really have exhibits.
Public hearing, so we want to hear everyone out.
And I apologize for being excessively formal in that case. I'm here and eager to answer any questions you may have for the applicant based on what you heard during the public hearing.
Okay. Commissioner Pollack?
I guess I would like to hear your response to the discussion about, I get your point about, expert traffic versus not expert traffic, but I mean, I can honestly say when I drove out to look at the property as well, a little trouble getting back onto Oleander, and I get that. Didn't necessarily mess my day up, but I'm sensitive to the statements about, getting on and off of Oleander, et cetera, et cetera. So what could you as a developer do to address some of the comments? Because I looked at some of the notes from the public meeting and that, and I think there's some legitimate concerns about the width of the road and, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I asked earlier about, is this the main input for emergency vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just appreciate your thoughts of what you as the development team would do to maybe address some of those concerns.
Sure. And there are some things there that are within our control and some that are not. Let me talk about traffic in the context of three different things. Internal traffic on the site, on the land that we control, traffic on Pfeiffer Avenue, and traffic on Oleander Drive. Internal to the site, we've designed the site in accordance with your technical standards. We've incorporated sidewalks. The radiuses of the turns are suitable for emergency vehicles, as you would expect. It's designed the way it needs to be in order to be approved today, in order to be safe and to work effectively. Pfeiffer Avenue, according to the traffic engineers, operates at a level of service A. It is in other words, it is not a very excessively traveled road for the width and availability of the resource that is Pfeiffer Avenue. I recognize and hear the concerns of several that the condition, the physical condition of Pfeiffer Avenue isn't as good as it could be. That's a public right-of-way that we don't own and aren't connected to, and it's a little bit beyond our control to do anything about improving the condition of Pfeiffer Avenue. Oleander Drive is a heavily traveled thoroughfare in the city of Wilmington. It operates, according to the traffic engineers, at a level service of F. In other words, there are far too many cars on Oleander Drive for the availability of the infrastructure that's there. This development is a minor change to the existing conditions and a nominal change compared to what could be developed when you talk about the traffic flow on Oleander Drive. I mentioned earlier the difference in the peak number of cars. The total number of vehicle trips over the course of an entire 24-hour period for this development is in the neighborhood of 425, and I apologize, I don't have the staff report in front of me, but it's less than 500. The travel on Oleander Drive on any given day is I believe, over 20,000 vehicles. You're talking about a nominal change and something that's well beyond the scope of what the city could ask this developer to address.
My final question, then I'll obviously let my peers jump in. When I look down at in the package of the staff recommendation, and there's a series of 6 conditions that they put it, would recommend. I'm assuming you've looked at that.
We have.
Are there any of those conditions that, because implied in a lot of those conditions are, you go back to the technical review, I mean, you get to final plans and all this and that, and if the city staff comes up with something that says, whoops, we got a red herring here, it's got to be fixed, I'm assuming you're going to be following these conditions, and if something jumps up, you're going to have to address it. Is that a fair assumption on my part?
Absolutely. Although I would offer that in this case, this has been a very protracted discussion with staff. You're looking at a project that's at the end of a 2+ year evolution. And so it's certainly possible that, it happens that the TRC finds something that they didn't notice before.
Right.
But we and you can take some comfort in the fact that this one has been very, very well discussed and vetted.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Bowman, did you have your hand up a moment ago?
I have a question for staff. I can wait if that's appropriate.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Sharp? Okay.
Okay.
All right. We'll shake things up a little bit. Anybody else have a question for the applicant? Okay. Yeah, when you remember to turn your mic on when you speak. Sorry, I can hear him right next to him. Anyone else for the applicant? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stick around. Sounds like we have some more questions for you coming up in our process here. So, commissioners?
So, this is my question for the attorney. My recollection from the meeting about a year ago was there was some reliance about the informal right-of-way at the, I don't know, at the far right of the plan. And some of the citizens believed that it was not a public right-of-way, but was privately held. And therefore, their point of view was it would not be legitimate as an access point for this new development. This was raised then as a point of contention when we went to the city council. And I wonder if you could help me understand whether this right-of-way, formal or informal, is a legitimate access point for this development, should it be approved.
I'll just put it in context. The right-of-way that was under discussion now is not the same one. They've abandoned the plans to use that one, and that's the one on your screen to the left.
Well,
So.
I heard a reference to that there is a second entrance, and I assume it's the same one on the right-hand side.
On the southern end, and the new one that they have purchased
The
the
new
lots.
one is a public street that is being put through.
They've purchased those lots on Pfeiffer to add.
I understand that. I understand that. So there's still reference being made to the right-of-way at the far right of the plan.
Okay, just want to make sure that's what you were
Reference, whether
talking
it's-
about. The new one.
Whether I've misunderstood or not, but there has been reference as, if it's blocked, we'll use the right-of-way.
So your question is?
My question is it a legitimate access point for this development if it were to be approved?
And Commissioner Sharp, I think you're referring to the variable width right-of-way on the right side of the screen. Is that correct? Just so I can.
Yes, where the arrow is.
That's correct. That, based on my recollection from a year ago, is not the primary access point that was in question. That one's at the other end on the left-hand side of the screen. A portion of that was a private access easement, but the variable width right-of-way that's shown on the right is a platted street that goes back to 1948. The city has not accepted it, but that would be a council decision if they did, but It's a right-of-way.
So the non-lawyerly answer is yes?
Yes.
Thank
May
you.
I can offer a little context that might
Thank you.
help clarify, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. So when we proposed this to you a year ago, there were 2 points of access. Where the cursor's located now, which is a private access easement that serves this section of the property up here. And there was also this public right-of-way, this variable width right-of-way at the southern end. Those were the two that were proposed at the time. What we're proposing to you today is a new public right-of-way here in the middle and an existing public right-of-way here on the edge. The owners of the fee simple title to the land beneath this private access easement believe that we did not have the right to utilize that private access easement for access to this development. We respectfully disagreed. Rather than fight that fight, although we believed that we would win it, we didn't feel the need to prove that we could win it. So we adapted the project to avoid the argument and avoid the conflict. What's in front of you now does not depend in any way, shape, or form on any private access easement.
Commissioner Bowman?
Yes, I have a question for staff. Brian, Mr. Chambers, R15 under the existing zoning, would that not allow for attached accessory apartment or detached accessory apartment in the R15 zone? Could you clarify?
Yes, the current zoning would allow for ADUs.
Okay. Not triplex or quadplexes, because you've got to get to a more intense
Right.
density or zoning to do that. So really, a total parcel of about 9 acres, if you just did single family, one dwelling per lot, you might be at 25 units. But I think potentially you could almost double that if each of those single family lot parcels had an accessory dwelling unit on it, which is really what the new land development code sort of favors as an option. So I think the density proposed in the traffic count could be more if it were to remain under the current zoning, and so it might even be a lesser impact than 1 car per 15 minutes in the AM hours. So I just wanted to give that context that the density proposed with this development is really not that much more intensive than, a density possible within the existing zoning that stands.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowman. Does staff want to comment on that? It sounded like it was directed.
I don't disagree.
Great. All right. Any other? Commissioner Sharp?
So I don't understand why you're coming forward with the proposal now if you believe there will be amendments to the UDO that would allow parking behind each of the individual units. In other words, it seems to be either it's designed now as the UDO is, or if there are going to be amended changes and you think that is a preferred design, why wouldn't you wait?
We must work with the UDO as it is now, as you say, and must propose a plan to you that complies with the current UDO, and so that's exactly what we've done. I don't know whether the code will change or not, but I know that we're ready to move forward, and so we've proposed a design that's consistent with the current law.
Okay, thank you. One more question?
Okay.
You've talked about it being a pedestrian community. Could you trace for me where the sidewalks are that would link these units? I can, with the cursor, so.
Yep, if you don't mind, I'd like to invite Mr. Mahaley back up to do so. And Brian, would you be kind enough to pull the rendering up from our presentation so you could use that for that purpose?
Commissioner Sharp, I think that this vignette in front of you kind of gives you an idea of the pedestrian connectivity, but let me go to the site plan here, the colored version, and I'll kind of I'll show you where the sidewalk connectivities are. We're proposing sidewalk down this entire length of Giles Avenue, and that will be a 5-foot sidewalk with a 5-foot plaza. We also have sidewalks interconnected into all the courtyards. So
Okay?
all these units will be interconnected with sidewalks. We also have sidewalks down both sides of the new 40-foot public right-of-way that extend out to Pfeiffer.
And across the bottom on Pfeiffer Avenue?
Yes,
Okay?
we'd be required to add sidewalks along our frontage with Pfeiffer as well.
The plot doesn't show that, I don't think, but you
Right.
are saying there is sidewalk along that?
Right there, there's sidewalk shown.
Okay, couldn't read it in the green.
Yep.
The last question is, how do people who live in the clusters, how do they walk to their cars? Is there sidewalks there, or do they walk on the roadways?
So I'll show you. The sidewalks extend out to these alleys.
Yeah?
So if I get into my car, yeah, I would come out and I'd have to, yes, sir, I'd have to walk down to where the sidewalk connects with the road to get to my front door. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to clarify that one.
Okay.
Actually, the way that the zoning ordinance is written right now, the intent is to encourage people to walk through the courtyard, because the actual front doors of these units face the courtyard, so you can actually walk through from your parking here, come alongside of the units in the back to the courtyard and come in your front door. You have your choice.
So you're saying if you're parked along the back fence, that you would walk across the grass until you got to the courtyard and then enter through the front door?
That is getting into an amount of detail that has not been detailed on this design at that point, but if I'm not mistaken, in discussions with staff, the intent is to encourage people to interact and go through the courtyard.
My only concern is if they have to depend upon walking on the roadway, it just puts them in danger of people backing in or backing out.
Understood.
And there's a concern for that in a pedestrian community.
I don't think there would be any problem in including sidewalks from the rear, even along this point here.
I agree with you. I think that would be very wise, and if you really want it to be a pedestrian community, you got to make it easy for people to walk and keep dry feet.
I would agree with you 100%.
Thank you. I have one more question.
There was a reference to a 20-foot road width, Mr. Frank, and I think it was, I want to make sure I understood correctly, was that the variable width right-of-way?
I think so. That was not our reference to the 20-foot roadway, but during the comments.
So is it going to be 20 feet when the city takes it over?
The variable width right-of-way at its narrowest is 20 feet, correct?
2 lanes, 10 feet.
Yeah. The variable width right-of-way at its narrow, of course, it's wider in places too, but the tightest that it gets is 20 feet, and I believe that that's the reference that you heard.
But the city's going to take that over as a public right-of-way?
It's already been offered for dedication as a public road, and our understanding is that the city's prepared to accept it if we improve it.
Okay. Thank you.
And you have a section of that, right? Is it in our packet, or was it on our screen?
So, where's the zoom?
The zoom's in the top left corner.
So you can see the 40-foot proposed right-of-way, 2 10-foot lanes with a stand-up curb with a 5-foot plaza and a 5-foot sidewalk. The Giles Avenue right-of-way, we proposed a ribbon curb along the side that abuts the R15 lots, and then 5 foot of nothing to allow for, connection there to, the idea is that potentially in the future, those lots would have access. They're going to have access to Giles Avenue, so what we're proposing is a curb there, a ribbon curb at that point where they can interact with Giles Avenue, stand-up curb along our portion of the right-of-way with 5-foot plaza, and then a 5-foot sidewalk. The 5-foot sidewalk on our portion of the project will be in a 5-foot easement. So we're essentially 30-foot right-of-way with a 5-foot easement for the sidewalk on our portion, if that makes sense.
So, to clarify, I don't think we have a section of the variable width right-of-way specifically. Is that what you were asking us about?
We do.
Okay,
We do. Let me get to that one next.
thank you.
There she is. Okay,
There
so
it is.
for the variable width right-of-way, this varies. It's, I believe the smallest portion is 26 feet. So we proposed 2 10-foot lanes, which is consistent with the roads proposed on the other right-of-ways. And then 1 foot 6 inch mountable curb, concrete mountable curb on each side. So essentially that will fit with inside the skinniest portion of that variable width right-of-way.
Thank you. While we're on right-of-ways, there was some concern from the public hearing about emergency vehicle access. So would you just, without getting into too much detail, walk us through the approval process to help people understand how that's going to be handled?
Jeremy Blair with Paramount Engineering. We've run computer modeling simulation using city fire truck template to demonstrate suitable emergency vehicle access on all of the intersections and connections shown on the plan.
Thank you. All right. I think we're back to Commissioner Sharp. Did you have something else?
I'm not sure I understood on the right-of-way. Do I understand that if you improve it, it will be added in as a city street? And is that a condition of your application?
Mr. Sharp, let me answer that real quickly. Only the city council can accept the road. The applicant's proposing to improve it, but it'll be up to council to accept it or not. So
I understand it. So is the applicant proposing to bring it up to standards? So if the city council chose to accept it, they could?
That's correct. Due to the width, there's some issues that the Design Adjustment Committee is going to be considering, but that's correct.
But it's not a condition of this application?
It is a practical condition of the development.
I'm sorry, say that again?
And we're glad to accept it if you propose it as a condition to the zoning, but I'm just making the point that it's a practical condition to we can't build this project without improving those rights-of-way, and we can't improve those rights-of-way without the cooperation of the city to accept them as public rights-of-way. And so we've understood from the outset that the onus will be on us to build it in a manner that's acceptable to the city's technical criteria.
That clarifies it. Fine, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Or staff, or anyone? Attorneys?
Madam Chair,
Where is that coming from?
Madam Chair, can I just clarify one thing? The Attorney Evans brought up the fact that this is before our Design Adjustment Committee. This did go to the Design Adjustment Committee this past month. There were some issues, concerns about what was being proposed within the rights-of-way. The applicant and staff met after that meeting to discuss those issues, and the plan that's in front of you is what will be going back to the Design Adjustment Committee on June 15th. So it still requires that one step for the Design Adjustment Committee to kind of give the final approval of the improvements that are being proposed. But what you have in front of us is what is going back after those modifications have been made.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Mr. Frank?
Thank you all very much.
All right, is there any further discussion, commissioners? Commissioner Bowman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I've got to say, 6 or 7 years on the commission, first cottage development I've seen come through and get real traction. I think it's a unique development, taking advantage of something that we wrote into the ordinance, and it's just a different model. And I think, frankly, the model works pretty well. And I think it's a good fit. So, and to Mr. Chambers, maybe you got benefit of seeing how some of these things get test fit. When you write zoning text, it's hard to conceptualize how they really come together. So I favor what is proposed.
Great, thanks. I agree. I think this is a great example of some of the infill projects that we've have been desiring for the city and things that we had in mind when we were rewriting the code. So I'm happy to hear that the cottage development especially is a little easier to work with. Commissioner Lennon?
I think, I've said this before, I think this is exactly what we asked for with the LDC, and I think it's going to be fantastic. I think, and this is just a general comment, there was an inference that the developer threw some stuff on the wall, hired a bunch of people with initials behind their name and made a presentation, and we'll see what we get. And that's not how the process works. These people all have initials behind their name because they're qualified professionals. They have to develop plans to the satisfaction of city staff, state regulators, and in some cases, federal regulators. And so I think, stormwater is one big one you hear a lot about, and they have to design this to take care of the stormwater they produce. On the traffic, one of the things that frustrates me is I hear a lot of complaints about traffic, but I don't hear any solutions. This body is not charged with solving traffic problems. Those are city-owned streets or state-owned roads in the case of Oleander. So, and we all live here, and we all drive on those same streets every day. What are we to do? Stop people from developing? We can't do that. These places are being built because people need housing. They are coming. They have been coming. So I would just ask that, if you've not read the Land Development Code, please do, because one of the best parts of it is the justification for its findings. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lennon. What is the will of the commission? Commissioner Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve Agenda Item 1, request for 239, 245, 251, 261, Giles Avenue, 257, 255, Pfeiffer Avenue, rezone from R15 to R5CD, including the conditions from staff's report as written. This request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington to create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable in the public interest, in that the proposed zoning request provide additional housing options, add to the existing street network, and would serve as an appropriate transition between the adjacent manufactured housing development and the surrounding residential neighborhood. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request, including all the conditions as provided in staff's case summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bowman has moved to recommend approval for item number 1. Do we have a second? Commissioner Pollock?
I second.
Commissioner Pollock with the second, and we'll do a roll call vote in alphabetical order. Commissioner Bowman?
Aye.
Commissioner Goins?
Aye.
Commissioner Lennon?
Aye.
Commissioner Lyle? Aye. Commissioner Pollock?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp?
Nay.
With the nay. And Commissioner Woodruff?
Aye.
And the motion passes 6-1.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
it occurred to me, Commissioner Sharp did ask a question, and I believe the applicant agreed on the sidewalk issue behind the parking places. But it's not, the sidewalks aren't a condition in what we just approved. But I guess, Ron, is that something that TRC will, or I'm sorry,
It's part of the,
It wouldn't be a specific condition of the code, so if you wanted to make it a condition, I would recommend you do it as part of this proceeding.
I don't personally propose to change my motion.
I didn't
That
hear,
helps.
I heard him say yes, so I just wanted to make sure it didn't get lost in the conversation when they go to TRC.
Understood.
Okay.
all right, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 2, which is a conditional district rezoning of property containing 1.06 acres located at 202 Beasley Road from R15 Moderate Density Single Dwelling District to R7 CD Medium Density Single Dwelling District Conditional District to allow for a 3-lot residential subdivision with a duplex on each lot with 6 units total. And pinch hitting for Mr. Harris tonight is Mr. Mahoney for our staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the commission. As mentioned, this is a conditional rezoning, conditional district rezoning request for 202 Beasley Road. The site is located on the north side of Beasley Road and contains approximately 1.08 acres and currently contains a single dwelling residence. This map shows a general vicinity surrounding the request. These are photos of the subject property and Beasley Road looking west and looking east. And these are photos of the adjacent land uses, primarily single dwelling to the west and to the east. There are some duplexes to the south and townhomes to the east of the project. As mentioned, the site is currently zoned R15 residential. It is bordered by R15 and R10 CD residential zoning to the north. There's R15 and R7 CD residential zoning to the east, R15 residential zoning to the west, and R5 CD and R15 residential zoning to the south. As mentioned previously, there are residential uses located in all directions surrounding the site. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property from R15 residential to R7 residential conditional district. This is for 3 lots, each containing a residential duplex structure. The units are proposed to be 2 stories. These 3 duplexes would be accessed by a shared driveway with direct single access to Beasley Road. Under the current R15 zoning, there's a development potential of 3 residential units. The applicant has provided these elevations for the proposed duplex structures. The comprehensive plan promotes location-efficient housing to help supply Wilmington with diverse housing options that are accessible to individuals and families of all incomes, needs, and preferences. This proposal allows for additional housing that's consistent with the development pattern to the south and east while serving as a transition to the development in the west. Staff believes the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the recommendations of the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and that the request is reasonable and in the public interest. Staff recommends conditional approval with the conditions listed in your case summary be applied. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Bowman?
Thank you. Mr. Mahoney, on page 4 of your report, I sort of liken this to the last application where we compared traffic. The existing R15 potential development, it allows for 3 dwelling units, which makes sense at R15 for about an acre site. But it doesn't allow for any possibility of developing any accessory dwelling units where we no longer require additional land area. So I think as we represent these charts, we should allow for that so it doesn't show the contrast that it could be. Because by my calculations, it would seem that you could do 6 dwelling units in its current state, without changing the zoning, if it were to fit that accessory dwelling unit kind of model. Can you respond to that, please?
Oh, yeah, that would be correct. Each lot would be allowed under the current zoning to have an accessory dwelling unit. So in the future, we can look at that in our traffic tables and make sure that's reflected.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowman. That's a great point. Commissioners, any other questions for staff? You said the applicant is here?
Thank you. Yes, they are.
Is that right? All right. Welcome, Ms. Wolf.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. My name's Cindy Wolf, and I've been working with the owner and the potential developer of this particular site. As Pat pointed out, this is a lot along Beasley Road. Certainly, since the traffic signal has been put in at Beasley and Pine Grove, it has made a huge difference, I think, in the attractiveness of this particular area for residential. And I think that, oops, sorry. I'm going to give up. Thank you. You can see that a lot has gone on over the years with R5, R7, and all of them have been conditional districts. We are also a conditional district. We are proposing, and I apologize, this should be R7 CD, not R5 that it's labeled, but still, just the justification of what has gone on around here and what we're proposing seems reasonable. This is just a color version of the plan that Pat has in your packets. I was pleased that during the public information meeting, 3 members, all from Capps Court, came and all had very positive feedback on this. The one thing that the man on the corner of Capps and Beasley wanted was just to make sure that the tree line along that western boundary stayed in place, and we have no problem with that. We have located the regulated trees, and other than 2 pines for that just little turn of the driveway at the back, we have no problem with any of those regulated trees, and certainly there are a lot of sub 8-inch unregulated trees that will continue to provide a nice buffer in between. What they had hoped was that we would not have to take trees out along the ditch that is just above the words Beasley Road, and we'll work with staff and the TRC in that. For this exhibit, I'm showing sidewalk along the boundary in the right-of-way, which is where you would generally have it. However, we have that ability to work with TRC to vary that sidewalk so that those trees can all be saved, and if necessary on our own property, then they'd be in a public pedestrian and non-vehicular access easement. So I think this hits all the points of what the comprehensive plan intends: address the street, provide sidewalks, limit conflicts on the roadways. So this parking in the back, single driveway access, it ticks all those boxes, and I believe the compliance list that Craig provided is entirely blue, which is good support. We appreciate that, and we hope you'll agree with the staff's recommendation that this is consistent. And Pat put these up. This is just an example of a type of duplex that is, are single families that we've attached together that are going up around the Seagate area, which I think is very similar as far as the neighborhood fabric that along Beasley Road, and then the consistency as far as location-efficient housing and infill development where the comprehensive plan has recommended it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, Ms. Wolf.
Thank you.
Is that you moving toward? Okay. All right, I'll open the public hearing at this time, and we have 10 minutes for arguments in favor of this item, and then another 10 in oppositions. We did not get anything in on the website, no public comments on the website, so I'll open the public hearing for anyone who's present and wishes to speak about this item. We'll start with those in favor of this item. Anyone here to speak in favor of item number 2? Okay, we will move to anyone here in opposition of agenda item number 2. Anyone here to, see somebody moving, but they're, anyone here to speak on agenda item number 2 at all? All right, the public hearing is closed. Would the applicant add anything else? Commissioners, do you have any discussion?
I would move. Okay, are we ready?
What is the will of the commission?
Okay. I would propose on item 2, the request for 202 Beasley Road. Sorry. Do I need to repeat that for the record? On agenda item number 2, request for 202 Beasley Road rezoned from R15 to R7 CD. I move the approval of this request that is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington. Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable and in the public interest because it is well designed and appropriate for the community. The proposal is subject to, the proposal for the subject property would allow for residential development that is compatible with existing neighborhoods and protects the desired character of the area. Therefore, I move the recommendation be approved.
And the conditions were in there?
There were, there were, I thought I didn't see conditions. Yes, I'm sorry, and including in that would be the 7 recommendations put forth in the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp has moved to recommend approval for agenda item number 2. Do we have a second? Commissioner Woodruff is second. And we will do a roll call vote in alphabetical order. Commissioner Bowman?
Aye.
Commissioner Goins?
Aye.
Commissioner Lennon?
Aye.
Commissioner Lyle? Aye. Commissioner Sharp?
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodruff?
Aye.
All right, and the agenda item number 2 is approved unanimously, 7-0. Moving on to agenda item number 3, a conditional district rezoning of property containing 2.23 acres located at 4127, 4211, 4219, and 4221 Cedar Avenue from R10 Medium Density Single Dwelling District to R5 CD Medium Density Mixed Residential District Conditional District to allow for a 9-lot residential subdivision. And we have Mr. Chambers here to deliver our staff report.
Good evening again. This site is located on the north side of Cedar Avenue between 41st and 43rd Streets. It's roughly a block north of Wrightsville Avenue. Contains over 2 acres and it has 3 single dwelling homes on it right now. This map shows the site within the context of the surrounding area. You can see it to the west of South Carr Avenue, just north of Wrightsville Avenue. We have some photos of the property looking from Cedar Avenue. The top left will be looking west, and the top right will be looking directly at the front of the property where the proposed right-of-way would be going between the pecan trees. The bottom left will be looking back towards the intersection of 43rd and Cedar, and then the bottom right is just another photo looking at the property from the east. These are photos looking north on 43rd Street and south on 43rd Street to give you an idea of what the context is in the neighborhood.
And then the bottom photos are that looking up and down Cedar Avenue. The site is surrounded by single-dwelling uses to the south and west, apartments to the north, and commercial to the east. The applicant proposes to rezone the site from R15 to an R5 medium-density mixed residential conditional district for a 9-lot residential subdivision. The applicant proposes a new local street to serve the proposed lots that would connect to Cedar Avenue. The applicant has agreed to a condition that the new homes located adjacent to Cedar Avenue would be oriented toward the right-of-way as to be consistent with the other homes located along the street. Traffic data indicates that this portion of Cedar Avenue and 43rd Street are currently operating within their design level of service. The estimated trip generation indicates that the proposal will result in a minimal increase in estimated peak hour trips. The proposed intensity development does not require a traffic impact analysis. The applicant has designed the site to allow the preservation of several regulated, significant, and specimen trees. However, there are several significant trees that are identified for removal. Staff is recommending an additional condition that any significant trees located outside of allowable building areas and the proposed access improvements be protected and retained. Staff also recommends that the proposed road be designed in a manner that minimizes the disturbance of the critical root zone of those pecan trees that are located on either side of the proposed right-of-way, because those will be serving as the street trees for that new road. The site is located within a neighborhood-scale infill development area of opportunity. The plan calls for infill sites within existing neighborhoods to be developed in a manner that is compatible and consistent with the existing development pattern. The plan calls for new development to address the existing character while allowing for transitional change. Staff believes this proposed zoning would allow for compatible infill. The proposed zoning would allow for an appropriate transition between the existing commercial and multi-dwelling uses to the north and east and the existing single-dwelling neighborhood. Staff believes this request is consistent with our comprehensive plan. The request is reasonable in the public interest and is recommending conditional approval, including the conditions that are included in the staff report. I would be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is prepared to make a presentation as well this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff at this time? All right. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. We'll ask the applicant to come up for her presentation.
Can I change them myself?
This has to be over the screen.
Okay.
And then, because if it's not over, it's not going to recognize.
Right or left? Okay, thanks. Sorry. My name is Cindy Wolf. Again, I've been working with the owner of this property and working through the process. We have made this petition. As you can see, this is adjacent to a major ditch that runs along the eastern boundary of this. To the east of that ditch and boundary are the commercial, several commercial uses along South Carr Avenue. Some large buildings, some commercial uses. We have Cedar Avenue, and north off of the screen is actually the courtyard. It's a multifamily development on Wilshire. As you can see by the zoning against it, again, commercial or community business to the east, the multifamily high, which is now a multi-dwelling, that's I guess what do they call it? A historic district that has been left over from the rewrite. And then it sits right here. What we originally looked at and were a little overzealous in our thoughts on was an attached single-family home development, which would, as in townhomes, where we would have had about 22 units. This was not met with fond thoughts as far as the community meeting, and so we revamped what we proposed. This way. What we are proposing now is a 9-lot, single-family development. Basically, a great number of my petitions over the past couple months have been exactly this. It is pretty much a type of, it's just a change from residential 10, residential R15, over to an R5. It's a residential change in development simply to get a type of product that is more attractive to people in our community. Also, it provides a little bit more density, and so it helps to solve the issue that we're having as far as the housing goes. This type of model is what Parkside in Mayfair is. It was very popular. You know, it's sort of, once it's done, is like a Charleston model where the lots are fairly shallow as far as their width concerned, and they get a good bit of density in them. The same thing with the neighborhood character, that same Parkside model, that is what's in mind here. What we've got is this interesting corridor of pecan trees up the middle, and we've taken advantage of that. We would propose to build a public street that goes in, it T-heads at the back, so it's got the accessibility that the fire department requires for streets of a length. We have the ability to have the stormwater management, and we are staying out of what that ditch has along it, which is a conservation easement that the city put in place a few years ago. This is the style of architecture in general. These are single-family lots, so there'll certainly be some versatility depending on who buys them. But overall, we believe that a project like this, it improves the public streets, it adds sidewalks. There aren't sidewalks, and the streets are less than compliant in this neighborhood as it is. We'll be required to improve Cedar Avenue. That was one of the complaints that the opposition had early on, was that it was too narrow as it sits right now. Whenever you do a subdivision along a public street that is not consistent with the current criteria of a public street, you have to take from the center line over, provide your 10-foot lane, put in curbing and gutter, put in sidewalks, and make sure that the other lane is whatever the fire department requires. So we're improving Cedar Avenue, we're putting in a new public street, we're providing 9 potential homes. We agree with all of the conditions that the staff has introduced as far as the trees. I think those will be to the benefit of the project itself and certainly keeping in character with the neighborhood. And again, I'm just thrilled to say that the consistency chart is totally blue. We feel that this project is reasonable and in the public interest for the same reasons that a lot of the comprehensive land use plan policies promote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Woodruff?
Ms. Wolf, no question, but more of a, I'm pleased to see that
A little closer to you.
response of the community was able to make what I call significant changes in the proposal. So to the community out there, it's not a hopeless cause. I do like what you've done. You know, density now is the kind of the, I don't know, good word, bad word. You've addressed it, and I think in a fun way.
Thank you. Our initial and just a quick explanation. If you look at the comprehensive land use plan, it actually defined this area as a different category than it should have been. Obviously, the comprehensive land use plan map is broad, and the particular line was not where it should have been in the first place. This is more consistent with neighborhood infill, and that's what we're basically proposing. But that was the reason for the overzealous first effort.
I have a question.
Commissioner Sharp?
I have a question, too. I think the design is worthy. I don't understand the 2 stub roads. Are they proposed to be extended potentially, or are they just simply not rounded out?
It used to be that at the end of a street like this, the turnaround was a cul-de-sac. It was a bulb. It's somewhat inefficient, and so their alternatives that the city technical standards has offered are what they call hammerheads or T-heads. In this particular case, the T over to the edge of Lot 6 gives Lot 6 the frontage that's required, same with 4 and 5. It'll be up to the TRC as to whether they intend for the possibility of the road in front of 4 to ever be extended. As you can see by the aerial, let me see if I can. You can't see a lot more. There is no development over there, but it goes quite a ways before it gets to Montclair or whatever the next street over is. So that will be up to the TRC. But if it becomes a public street and it is stubbed at the property line, certainly interconnectivity is promoted.
Thank you.
I have one question about Cedar Avenue. There's another map that's zoomed out a little bit, shows the Cedar Avenue, I think it's unimproved right away, because
It's
it goes out to
unimproved to the
Carr.
southeast.
Was there discussion about at least a pedestrian access that way? If there was any more density, I would love to see a public right-of-way for cars come out there, but at least a...
We'll be required to take the sidewalk all along our frontage, so over to the ditch. Unfortunately, that's a good-sized ditch, so as to
Okay.
whether it could be bridged or, I mean, that's a pretty hefty undertaking, but that's certainly something that is usually discussed in TRC. But our current requirement would be sidewalk the full frontage of Cedar Avenue, whether it's improved or not improved. So it would be up to the TRC to give any, or perhaps the DAC, the Design Adjustment Committee, to give any lenience to that. But our property corner is in the ditch, and it's a big ditch.
Okay, thanks. And I'll echo some of the comments from the other commissioners about listening to the neighbors, and I think that's a good example of how the system is working, that we have the applicants talk to the neighbors before they come see the city, and I think that's working, and I appreciate your willingness to scale it back a little bit. I kind of appreciated the intent for more density in that particular location. It's kind of transitional, but I also recognize the neighborhood fabric and keeping true to that, so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pollack?
Yeah, two quick observations. If you could go back to the slide where you show the 9. Yeah, that's good enough. With your arrow cursor, just show me again how far the sidewalk is going to go in front of.
Technically, the sidewalk would go all the way to this corner.
Yeah.
But you start getting into that conservation easement and
Right.
ditch. Now, the neighbors might be able to share, I don't think that there is a current walkway, but I haven't walked past that edge of 43rd Street myself.
So you'd go then from that point on the triangle on the lot all the way up past Unit 1?
Yes.
Okay. Second question is, I see trees playing behind 4 and 5. Any thoughts about trees behind 1, 2, 3, on that side of the,
There wasn't anything regulated, located. I mean, the trees I'm showing are the existing ones that were regulated and identified by a surveyor.
Okay.
Most of the trees behind 1, 2, and 3 are on the adjacent property. Now, there could be some unregulated, smaller trees.
Yeah.
And again, the staff, similar to the Beasley Road conditions, and I believe these conditions, the typical is if they're not in the building envelope,
Right.
then they need to be saved.
oh, okay. So there's, what I'm looking at is the trees that I would think ought to be there are just outside the parameters of the lot.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I like the way that you worked that out, that natural.
Oh, that pecan
Pecans,
grove is just perfect, and pecans are typically a little bit higher limbing, and so I think we can work well with the TRC to make sure that it is an avenue.
Yeah, it just screamed, here's my entrance to the development. It looked great. Any other questions for applicant at this time? Commissioner Lennon?
Just have one, and this may be better suited to staff, but when was the change to this, which I like very much, by the way, to this plan done?
Prior to submittal. We had the meeting, and now the meetings are required prior to submittal. And after the meeting, we changed gears in about 3 or 4 days and made this submittal.
Okay. I'll save the related questions for staff.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
I have one more question.
Commissioner Sharp?
On lots 1 and 9, do they face the new street or do they face Cedar Avenue?
That is one of the conditions also that we are agreeing to. lots 1 and 9, whatever faces Cedar will have a presence. Now, they might have a front door to the center and a porch or something, but it will look more like the front of a house, not the back side of a house.
Or the side of the house?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Good, thank you.
And that's condition number 6,
Correct.
actually, on page 7. All right, thank you. We will open the public hearing, and we will start with anyone who is here to speak in favor of agenda item number 3. Anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition of agenda item number 3? Welcome. Start with your name and address, and before you leave, make sure you've signed in.
Okay, thanks. My name's Paige Woodruff. My address is 938 41st Street, so down Cedar. The next street over is not Montclair, it's 41st. So I live on that corner. I wrote it down so that I can just kind of read.
You could move the microphone down just a little. That would help.
thanks.
You have to step on your tiptoes.
Thank you. So I'm a first-time homeowner there, although I've been a resident in Wilmington since 2007. It's been a little heartbreaking to see the development in Wilmington, to be quite frank. Like, it's kind of hideous. I feel like things could be done in a more expensive way to the developers, but in a way that suits the city itself and just the character of the city a little nicer. And just in response to like talking about how the roads and the cars are not, you know, the issue of this board, it is like a planning board, I would think. So it's like if some cohesiveness between the two, I think would be a good idea to make the city more bikeable. I didn't have a car for 10 years. I'm a biker. I work at Two-Wheeler Dealer, so I'm a huge proponent for biking and pedestrian access. Anyways, though, I feel that the majority of the neighborhood renters and owners alike who I have spoken with, many of want to keep our current zoning intact because we want to keep the same character in our neighborhood, which is a relatively small neighborhood. It's 4 streets. So you have 43rd, 41st, Montclair, and then Cedar that goes perpendicular. And they're wedged between Wilshire and Wrightsville Ave. There's still opportunity to make profit with the current zoning. So as the person who started this conversation said, you know, there's only 3 single-family homes on the properties currently. So with the current zoning, there's ability to put garage apartments, which is what everybody in the neighborhood has followed the rules since like the 60s when they started that. So there's still room for growth there. And there are more empty spaces in the center of the neighborhood, which if this gets rezoned, like people are standing by watching, and it could create encroachment into our small neighborhood for other rezoning. But the neighborhood's not against development. We just want to see it done with R10 zoning, the way that everything else is done. And there's still ability to do, you know, to develop with that same zoning. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, the apartments that are off Wilshire, that are behind these properties in question, they're not in any way connected to our neighborhood currently. It's not a transitional zone. They don't affect our neighborhood in any way. And we feel that the encroachment needs to stop somewhere. So it's like if we rezone, then it's just more encroachment into our neighborhood. If the R5 zoning is accepted against the neighborhood's wishes, there needs to be stricter conditions added to this project, such as each lot only having one primary dwelling, which is what they're saying they want to do, but with no accessory dwelling units permitted, because in R5 there is still, that could be a potential thing that could happen. I propose a condition that the dwellings do not exceed the height of existing ordinance in our neighborhood, which is 2 stories maximum, and that off-street parking for 2 cars per dwelling is provided. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Satterfield, how's our time looking?
About 5.5 minutes.
Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition of this project, of agenda item 3?
Good evening. Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Bernhard Thursum. My wife and I live at 1030 43rd Street. We have lived in Edgewood, the historic Edgewood, which is this development, since 1992. We've lived on Maple Avenue. Maple is a strange unpaved street that still exists off of 43rd Street. And we live in a garage apartment. The main thing I want to stress here is that the existing character of the neighborhood is based on single family with garage apartments. We have a garage apartment. Our neighbors have garage apartments. They're a wonderful opportunity for affordable housing. A great opportunity. We live in a great neighborhood. We can walk on the streets. We had to fight like hell probably 10, 12 years ago to get sidewalks on 43rd Street. We'd love to see sidewalks here, but it doesn't have to come from a development. It could come from the city to get the sidewalks. And I walk past this, this property with my dog virtually every day. Didn't do it today because it's too hot. But again, the character of the neighborhood is single family with garage apartments. Please keep this. There's no compelling reason to rezone for density. Density can be had within one unit by just keeping it the way it is, house, garage apartment. The blue house that we saw in the slide is what the applicant, I believe, built on Doc Meadows' old property at 41st and Wrightsville. And it's a beautiful example of a nice single-family home with a garage apartment, exactly what we need over on Cedar Avenue to fit in with the character of the neighborhood. And that applicant apparently did that knowing that it was R10 and followed the R10 requirements. This is R10. We just asked that it stay R10, and he can still get 8 units. They would not be full size. They would be 4 full-size homes with 4 garage apartments. But again, as you know, you probably know, the garage apartments have historically been great places for younger families, children, to rent before they can afford to buy a house. It would provide a wonderful addition to the city if these were single family, as we have in that neighborhood with R10. So please keep the R10 zoning. We appreciate it. The residents appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Thurston.
Thank you.
3 minutes, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition of this item? Okay. Welcome. We have about 3 minutes left in the public hearing.
Okay. My name's Albert Icard. I live on 4126 Cedar Avenue, across the street from the new proposed developed area. I just propose, and I'm really concerned about the traffic increase. I've lived there for 40 years, and it's a quiet, nice neighborhood, walking street, and right now we have children that play, and it's just a different community, a quiet community. And I'm concerned about the traffic increase by potentially 18 more cars on Cedar, which is only 15 feet wide. Basically a single lane for one-way traffic. More cars than currently on Cedar and 43rd Street. If it was to be rezoned to accommodate a new and what appears to be a separate community of its own, I think it would also be best the community has its own access to it. From the
Can you move that
aerial
microphone
map-
a little closer to your mouth? There you go. The
From
microphone a little closer.
From
Thank you.
the aerial map, I don't know which one I can't. Anyhow, there's an aerial map there. Let's see. There is a right-of-way that is Cedar that continues from Kerr, as far as I understand, that it's right here. And as from what I understand, Wilmington owns that. And it continues, Cedar Avenue is on the other side of Kerr, and it continues on to across College. And it hasn't been completed yet. And if Wilmington owns it, I don't see why they can't use this as an access road into this community. It just needs Wilmington to complete the paving along with builder's help. From what I understand is Wilmington's uncompleted right-of-way that needs to be finished. That would probably solve most complaints. Along with that, a buffer of, say, azaleas 8 feet tall along the Cedar area being affected. I'm not against the development, but it needs to be done smartly. It's just to put that road in there would probably be just as easy as widening Cedar Avenue and sidewalks and all that. If they put that road in, continue that extension of Cedar Avenue, they could potentially solve all the problems.
Time.
There, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Reichard. All right, the public hearing is closed. Would the applicant like to come up and address some of the concerns brought up in the public hearing?
Thank you. Just briefly. The plan is 9 lots because we chose not to try to transition into a much higher density, a different type of housing product, something like that. If in the staff summary, Brian shares that in an R10 district, this is already 4 lots with some creative design and a private access easement, it could be 7 lots. Yes, those 7 lots could have accessory dwellings, that'd be 14 units. What we're proposing here is not willy-nilly. It guarantees the saving of trees. It gives the surety of a conditional district and a plan and those conditions to be followed such that it is much more with the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood. It does, yes, potentially those 9 units could also have accessory dwellings. And certainly, the feasibility of ADUs are an excellent option for adding residential potential to our community. And these owners would like to have that ability also. So we're not, as I see it, the complaints we're not a different, we're just a different residential district. We're talking about the potential for 4 more units if every one of these 9 opts to have an accessory dwelling. So with that, I think we've done what they've asked us to do. The opposition, the points that were made, I believe we've addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Commissioner Woodruff?
Mr. Wolf, I'm just curious that the young lady that spoke, she said, if you're going to put it up, 3 requests, and I wrote down 2 and I missed the 3rd one, but just, you don't have a draft of what the buildings
Mr.
look
Woodruff,
like.
could you speak into the mic just a little bit? Thank you.
I'm sorry. You don't have in your proposal a graphic of what the housing would look like. It's just a block on the page, which is fine. That's okay.
Well, we did, though. I mean, in general,
Well, okay,
that was a style.
Do you think you are in compliance with her request? I mean, no above 2 stories, parking for 2 cars on each lot?
All of those things, well, the 2 stories, there is a height limitation in the R5 district, and I believe it's 35 feet, similar to all of the R10 districts. So there's no difference in the actual height. Height is measured to the mean of the roof pitch. As far as that type of architectural design, yeah, sometimes they have a loft area or an attic area that's improved, but the style is to the neighborhood character. And if you go around the neighborhood, there's a variety, certainly.
Sure. What about the parking?
Parking is a requirement of any lot has to have the 2 parking spaces, but if it has an accessory dwelling unit, then it also has to have an extra 1 parking space.
I have no idea, but are these lots big enough for an accessory building?
Yes, Similar to the project that was approved over on Wrightsville Avenue just a month or 2 ago. You know, well, actually, you all missed this, and it might be worth just bringing it up briefly if you will bear with me. When we came out of the Planning Commission, what we had agreed to was a condition that all accessory dwellings would be attached, no detached accessory dwellings. And what that in fact, did was very much limit having any type of a backyard to the primary dwelling. And I don't have that exhibit with me, but when we got to the city council, it all made sense. We made a valid argument. It was sort of on the seat of my pants that evening. And so, yes, very much so, accessory dwellings are possible, whether attached or detached. And that, I wish I had that example because it's very indicative of what can happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Chambers, were you going to address the parking comment?
Under the new land development code, single dwelling lots outside of the 1945 do not have a minimum parking requirement. We thought it wise to just let the market dictate. Typically, you're not going to build a home unless you can park a couple cars there, so there's not a minimum requirement. Obviously, this board could, this commission could add that condition at the agreement with the applicant.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you, Ms. Wolf. What kind of discussion do we have, commissioners? Commissioner Bowman?
Thank you. I understand the neighbors' concerns, but I think the land has some limitations geometrically, the angle of the low part, the conservation resource, the existing cedar, or not cedars, but pecans that we'd like to retain and keep in, you know, an organized fashion with the build out. I don't know. I think this is pretty good, and I think it's worth having something different because of the way that the lots want to subdivide.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowman. Yeah, I think the site plan is really well thought out and makes good use of the interesting shape of the lot, and is a great steward of those trees especially, and is, again, what we're looking for in our infill lots to, and especially with this one increasing density by just a little bit with some delicacy and blending in with the fabric of the neighborhood. Any other comments, or what's the will of the commission?
I would just quickly add ditto to what I said at the end of the last one, but also I think this is a great example, as Commissioner Woodruff indicated, of hearing the community's concerns and adjusting the plan accordingly. Sorry, Amy, got away from it. So that being said, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Great.
In just a second. Madam Chair, I'd like to move approval for the rezoning of 4127, 4211, 4219, and 4221 Cedar Avenue from R10 to R5.
Vice Chair Lennon, I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. Thank you.
4127, 4211, 4219, and 4221 Cedar Avenue from R10 to R5 Conditional District. This request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington, the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and the proposed zoning request will be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and allow for an appropriate transition between the existing commercial and multiple dwelling uses to the north and east and the existing single-dwelling neighborhood. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request, including all conditions as provided in the staff's case summary.
Thank you. Commissioner Lennon has moved to approve agenda item number 3. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Pollock with the second, and we will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bowman?
Aye.
Commissioner Goins?
Aye.
Commissioner Lennon?
Aye.
Commissioner Lyle? Aye. Commissioner Pollock?
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp? And Commissioner Woodruff?
Aye.
And the motion passes 7-0. We will take about a 10-minute break to give the closed captioners a rest, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Tracy, I saw you testifying the other day on a replay. I'm trying to think what you were.
Oh, city council?
There.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, somebody's in my seat.
Exactly. Yes. Bill, could you get out of my seat, please?
Would you use your power to get us some new seats? And they don't come up.
Yours is like ejecting.
So, I mean, you have all this power. Use it for the good of. Yes, I heard him say yes too.
That was a good catch,
Because otherwise you have to walk behind all the cars. Well. I think they'll do it. I thought I saw a plan previous where they had all. So you're saying we should have made that more explicit?
we could have, but Commissioner Bowman wasn't changing his motion, so.
Right. Well, they could have
I would have
amended.
had to consult the attorney how I handled it.
Yeah.
I think that would answer it. Okay, we'll get started in just another minute.
So, could I have your chair? I'm just joking. I didn't get the proper response. Sure, I'll use my power for it, okay? I've changed. See, you can do it as I've had requests from fellow commissioners to approve the chair. They got tons of money.
All right, the Planning Commission is called back to order. And we will be moving on to agenda item number 4. And one of our commissioners has, Commissioner Goins has requested recusal from this item. Do we have a motion to recuse Commissioner Goins?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recuse Commissioner Goins from item number 4.
Thank you, Commissioner Lennon. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Woodruff with the second, and we'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Commissioner Goins, if you could just turn off your camera for now and rejoin us after the vote on agenda item number 4. Thank you. All right. Item 4 is a conditional district rezoning of property containing 50.17 acres located at 3152 South 17th Street from O&I CD, Office and Institutional Conditional District, to MD10 CD, Medium Density Multiple Dwelling Residential District, and MD17 CD, High Density Multiple Dwelling Residential District, Conditional District, to allow for a residential development to include a mix of cottages, duplexes, townhomes, and multifamily units. And Mr. Mahoney is back with us for the staff report.
Good evening again, Madam Chair. Thank you. As mentioned, this site is located on the west side of South 17th Street and north of Independence Boulevard, and contains approximately 50 acres and is currently vacant and wooded. This map shows the general vicinity surrounding the request. You'll notice the point at Barclay located to the south, with the Hanover Heights neighborhood located to the north. These are photos of the subject property. Photos are shown along Independence Boulevard, South 17th Street, and along Newkirk Avenue to the north. And these are photos of the adjacent land uses. Again, the point at Barclay is located to the south, Barclay Center is located to the east, and the Hanover Heights neighborhood to the north along Newkirk Avenue. There we go. The site is currently zoned O&I CD, Office and Institutional Conditional District. This site was rezoned from R15 residential and PD plan development to O&I CD office and institutional conditional district as part of the Barclay West mixed-use development. This included property along both the north and south side of Independence Boulevard. The site's bordered by R15 zoning to the north, along with MD17 CD zoning. There's RB CD zoning, regional business conditional district to the south. There's more O&I CD properties remaining to the west, and there's O&I to the east across South 17th Street. Here's the proposed site plan. The applicant is proposing to rezone this portion of the original Barclay West master plan development from the current O&I CD to a new MD10 CD, medium density conditional district, and an MD10 CD, high density multi-dwelling conditional district. The proposal is for a residential development. The total units are 570 units with over 1,000 bedrooms. The MD10 portion of the site, shown in blue on the site plan on your slideshow there, that is proposed to include 170 single dwelling units, 7 duplexes, and 96 townhome units. The MD17 section of the proposed development, which is outlined in red on the site plan, the MD17 portion is to include 290 multi-dwelling units. This includes 92 one-bedroom apartments, 179 two-bedroom units, and 19 three-bedroom units. For the entire project, there is a total of 122 one-bedroom units, 373 two-bedroom units, and 75 three-bedroom units. A new roadway network is proposed with connections from Independence Boulevard across from Gallery Park Drive and South 17th Street. This is consistent with the previously approved plans for the Barclay West development. Currently, a traffic impact analysis, or TIA, has been submitted and is currently under review. The proposed recommendations are included within the case summary on page 4. There is an emergency vehicle and pedestrian access provided to the north to Newkirk Avenue. This was a condition of the previous master plan, and this has been provided as well with this proposal. There is also a 60-foot wide undisturbed vegetated buffer provided along the northern property line to the single-family neighborhood to the north. These are elevations provided by the applicant. You'll see to the left are the MD17, the multi-dwelling elevations, with the MD10 CD elevations provided on the right side of the page. The site is located within a greenfield site as multi-use place area of opportunity. It is also located within a mixed-use place, mixed-use center, and it is along a major road corridor, a community parkway and loop road, and community connector, and along a high-capacity transit route, and also includes a conceptual green connection. The comprehensive plan calls for an increase in residential density as part of mixed-use development that provides goods and services to nearby residents, which allows for multiple stops at one location and creates a density necessary to support transit service along the corridor. The proposed rezoning request would provide a residential component to an existing commercial area, adding to the mix of uses, both existing and planned, and provides multimodal connections between adjacent sites. Compared to the previous rezoning request in 2013, this proposal provides an appropriate residential development between an existing single-dwelling neighborhood to the north and a commercial node to the south, located at South 17th Street and Independence Boulevard. Staff believes this request, the proposed zoning amendment, is consistent with the Great Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and that the request is reasonable in the public interest. Staff recommends conditional approval and that the conditions outlined in the case summary be applied. That concludes my presentation. The applicant's here as well to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff at this time? All right, thank you.
Okay,
And the
thank you.
applicant's here for presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Matt Nichols. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Middleburg Communities. For the Commission's consideration this evening is a conditional rezoning request for a proposed residential development that will provide a variety of housing types and rental options in a very central location in the city of Wilmington. By way of background, the subject property is a portion of the approximately 301-acre Barclay West development that was unanimously approved by City Council in 2013. It includes several large parcels on both sides of Independence Boulevard in this vicinity. I know the Commission is very familiar with the portion of the development on the southeast side of Independence, which is being developed as the Point, which contains various commercial, office, and residential uses, including restaurants, a movie theater, multifamily residences, and office space. The rezoning request this evening is for approximately 50 acres of the Barclay West development on the northwest side of Independence, as shown here. I was going to emphasize three points as the Commission considers this application, and one is the very central location of this development. It has excellent access to 17th Street, which is a minor arterial, and Independence, which is a major arterial. It's noted in the staff report that South 17th Street has a level of service B, and Independence has a level of service A. So these are typically things we're not used to addressing here, with great access to two major roads and a great level of service. And the property is in very close proximity to the hospital, which is probably the largest employer, one of the largest employers in the city, if not the entire region. Other employment centers, existing shopping services and amenities, and keep in mind too that the front part of this development is already zoned RB, and we'll be bringing additional retail, commercial, goods and services in very close walkable proximity to this proposed development. Since the 2013 approval, we've had significant economic growth and population growth in Wilmington, which has all been very good for Wilmington, but it has also increased the pressure on the housing market. And as the Commission knows, there's currently a housing shortage in Wilmington. This will help address that by providing the missing middle housing that we talk about, and also a single-family rental component. The third point I would emphasize is that the additional residential density will actually help the commercial component at Barclay, and this density is very well planned. I'll just point a few things. On the MD10 portion of the site is an excellent transition to the lower density Hanover Heights single-family neighborhood to the north, and then the higher density MD17 is directly on South 17th Street, and it's adjacent to existing MD17 zone property to the north. And last, as noted in the staff report and in the comprehensive plan, supports and encourages higher density residential development along priority transit corridors. So simply stated, this is exactly the type of location that the comp plan would recommend supporting higher densities and encouraging higher densities. I'm now going to turn it over to my client, Jason Pfister, who will talk a little bit about some of the features and design components in the plan. Jason, if you don't mind coming up, and turn it over to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I appreciate your time today. I did want to just kind of expound upon what Matt said and emphasize for the what we call the Hamlet at Middleburg. It's our single-family cottage communities. We just wanted to just sort of highlight the design features and kind of the thought process we had in going for that portion of the project. As you can see, these are some of the. We've got some elevations here. The design of the Hamlet is to make sure that
I'm sorry, sir. Could you put the microphone down just a little bit? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Matt's a little taller than I am, sorry. The Hamlet is designed, you can see in this middle picture here, we have these activated green spaces that we call pods, and we try to design to where, every unit in that portion of the project is going to front on either an activated green space on the street there, or in these activated street space we call pods. So every unit will have its own private yard, but you'll also have this sort of communal space that will be, we'll have things like community gardens, hammocks, fire pits, and the like. So you have kind of it enhances the sense of community and increases the walkability throughout the community. And I know we showed some of the elevations in the staff report that were in black and white, so I just wanted to share a few of these renderings so you can kind of get a feel of what we're going for in this portion of the project. You can see here, this is what we're talking about. At Middleburg, we emphasize heavily our landscaping and the green feature of our projects, so that's a major focus of our hamlet projects in particular. And this is another example of kind of how the design integrates those activated green spaces. I've also included, these are just some, Middleburg, these are some of our other projects, including River Lights, which we recently completed here in Wilmington, that just shows some of the, some of the projects we've done in the past and kind of gives you a look and feel for what we're looking for. I think with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Pollack?
And could you go back to the drawing that shows Independence and it has the point? Keep going back. Yeah, right there. So help me with the use of the arrow, if you would. I want to make sure I'm clear. Where does on this section in the middle here, how does that?
So this is the single-family portion
Yeah,
here, and then this is the 5 apartment units.
I'm with you. Does the single family have any egress to, or any way to access Independence? Is that, I was confused by some of the drawings, so.
Let me see if I can go back to the
Yeah, right.
site plan here. So, is there direct access to Independence? I'm sorry, I'm a little
That's fine.
confused on the orientation.
Yeah, so
You want to take this?
yes, sir. So the original, I'll flip back a slide here. The original Barclay approval in 2013, you can see it's maybe not the greatest scale, but there's actually sort of a horseshoe roadway, and that hasn't changed. And so it will have access to Independence via that horseshoe roadway that is going to be completed. And then there will be eventual access as you go to the northwest. You can see where that roundabout is as you get closer to, it will actually connect to Carolina Beach Road. So upon sort of build out, it will have, you'll have access to not only South 17th Street, you'd have that through the MD 17 portion, but you'll have it through the commercial portion with the Horseshoe Road to Independence, and then you can actually get over to Carolina Beach Road if you go to the northeast connector.
So the access to Independence will be once that retail part is more filled out, is that the point?
On the timing of that, I may have to defer to our engineers. Dan Fisk is here, and also the property owner representative Adair Graham is here. But that is part of the project for sure, and it would be. I don't know whether it's I don't know that it's a requirement to have the horseshoe complete for this, but certainly it's something that will be put in, and I'll have Dan mention it. Yeah.
Dan Fisk from Paramount Engineering. We are proposing to build at least a portion of that horseshoe road, so there's one major access off of Independence that will connect directly to that single-family cottage units with a driveway connection.
Okay, I'm a visual learner, so that's why I just wanted to be able to look at it. Thank you.
I have a few questions. The first one is, when you were putting your project together, did you consider any of our workforce housing incentives? You had mentioned that you're close to the hospital, which is, it's a great area for this level of density, so I was happy to see the project changing from O&I to multifamily, and
we have not
would
had
love to see.
specific discussions yet. That's something we'd certainly consider and look at. This is one of the, I think, really the advantages, particularly of the Hamlet section, is this opens up an entirely new, single-family housing as a rental product. This opens up a new sort of, it makes single-family living accessible to much more of the community.
Just by
Just
supply and demand?
by offering a new product.
Economics of
yes.
supply and demand, okay. But there's not any,
Not specifically designated at this time, but that's something we could certainly, look at and look into.
yeah, it would, if that were something you were considering, it would probably be now to make it part of the proposal for moving forward. The site plan, walk me through some of your traffic calming features. There's a lot of straightaways with parking, whether it's parallel or pull-in parking. So tell me about how the you'll slow the traffic down a little bit internally.
I'm going to refer to our traffic engineer, Jonathan.
Part of the plan is, even though there's some straighter sections there, with the parallel parking, there's a reduced cross-section of the roadway width to kind of help with traffic calming, keep more of a sense of place and a smaller speed limit, so it's not an open speedway for somebody to run down the road through.
Just the width of the road?
The width of the road is a big part, and then also the interspersing of pedestrian connections and the parallel parking itself will help to calm traffic.
Are these four-way stops? Is that?
Jonathan Guy, Kimley Horn, absolutely. So as we get into TRC and we start to look through the layout of this, we'll be looking at key intersections of how we want to route traffic through there, looking at four-way stops, where's the two-way, so that you're not creating a straightaway through there. You're creating this nice block that's going to help control and platoon speeds through there and traffic through the process. Where we have crosswalks and locations, things we can look at are raised crosswalks to elevate the pedestrian, which will help to slow, or raised intersections. All of those are details that we'll get into as we get into TRC design, but those are in the backs of our mind as we're thinking through the overall layout of this at this point.
Okay. As one of you said the word speedway, and that's exactly what I see on the site plan. It's very efficient, and the grid system is very efficient to get the density that you need in there, but I'm concerned about the pedestrian movement. And last one is, for me, for now, is the amenities. You touched on it and showcased it a little bit in the pictures. So a development of this size, I'm sure you have lots of amenities.
Yeah, this is, yeah, so we're going to have a luxury, each of the two halves of the project will have their own amenity center. There's an amenity center incorporated into one of the apartment buildings on the apartment side. They'll have similar amenities, so you're going to have your resort-style pool, fitness center, dog park, grilling stations. These are some representative photos of some of our amenities in other projects. We'll also have valet trash, electric vehicle charging stations. You know, it's a big focus. Our amenities are a big focus of our projects. And
okay, and I know the market drives that. I just didn't see much on and our site plans are kind of small, so if there was any notes on it, they're probably a little harder for me to read anyway. Any commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Pollack?
Yeah, one more question on your, as you were showing some of your buildings, and the ones that are like 3 or 4 stories, you have elevators in those?
yeah, there's 5.
Actually, it's a broader question as that, but it's, you know, how do you, accessibility for, you know, for handicap or whatever, so an elevator would be one example, but.
Yeah, all of the, I assume you're asking about the apartment buildings. Those
Yes,
are, it's going to be
yes.
5 4-story. They're all conditioned corridor, secure entry, and then obviously all of our buildings will be, and our entire community will be ADA compliant.
So again, let me pinpoint again. You will have elevators in those.
Yes, every building has an elevator.
Got it.
And when I say controlled corridors, it will be, there's no open breezeways. It's, you know, entrance into the building with a key fob.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bowman?
Yes, thank you. I was curious about accessing the single-family units that have, they're sort of in a second row. Is there a alley to access those?
Yeah, there's going to be a pathway system to give pedestrian access to those homes and to do it in a, you know, minimize the distance someone has to walk from where they park their car to get to those units. It's a
Do you
little
have
hard to
anything
see.
to illustrate what maybe those alleys would look like?
I do not have a slide to show that. Let me just look and see.
Or zooming in on a site plan might do the same trick?
You can see a little bit, maybe, if you can see here, there's one kind of around the edge of the pod. That's kind of hard on this particular rendering, but that's something that you know, absolutely our residents are going to want, and that's something that we got to make sure we deliver.
So this appears to be almost similar to a cottage-style development, maybe bigger scale than we saw earlier tonight, where most of the grounds are held in the commons and people are free to move through the alley spaces or the adjoining corners to get to second row properties, for example.
Yes, there will be, it'll be clearly designated kind of, you know, common walkways, but the units will also have private yards as well. Small private yards.
Thank you.
Could I follow up on that?
Commissioner Sharp?
I'd like to follow up on that.
Move a little closer to your mic. Move the mic closer to you.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on that. Can we go to figure 1? Oh, okay. And figure, well, there, wait a minute.
Just tell me when to, I don't have numbers. So.
Next. The other way. There. Okay? So around the pods, I can see a complete square, but I also see a second tier. So looking at any of the one pods where there are 2 tiers, how do the residences interface? Back to back?
So like, for example, right, you can see the mouse right here. Obviously, these units are going to face the street. And then
the ones behind them
the
are?
ones behind them are going to, any unit that fronts one of these you know, peach-colored pod areas is going to front that unit.
Okay.
So these units are back to back.
And so how does one gain access to those second tier, the inside of the pods?
There'll be a pathway between.
And parking will be on the streets?
Yeah, there's street parking, and then the three-bedroom cottages have a detached or a attached rear-loaded garage.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lennon?
Have you replicated this site plan anywhere else?
We have, this is new for Middleburg. We have several sites under construction, but we do not have any with residents yet. But by the end of the year, we should have. I'm hopeful that this is, there's more photographs and less renderings in this, as this presentation.
But the ones under construction, are they similar in terms of the 2-tier?
Yes, it's very similar design with the pod, the 2-tiered structure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I get that. Not everybody would want to live on the pod, but some people would, so it's nice to have some variety there. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Woodruff?
Just real quick, I noticed in the community meeting you had, the listing, it sounded like most of the people are from Hanover Heights. that backs up to it. And the changes y'all made, do you feel you've addressed to their satisfaction? Because I do know you made several concessions anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. We did increase the buffer where we could. There's a storm drainage right-of-way that kind of affects how much we can do with the buffer in certain sections. But at the community meeting, the two kind of main points of focus were just general, informative. What are you planning on putting in? And then the main discussion revolved around the Newkirk Road connection, and I think Hanover Heights was pretty clear that they did not want that. So that's why you see what we've proposed so far. We also added a fence. All of this You're not going to be able to see it on this scale, but there's a dark black line on this. We are going to install a fence along the entirety of any lots that back up to Hanover Heights just to provide, an additional buffer. And that was something that the residents mentioned, and it's something that we'd be happy to do.
What kind of fence are you talking about? I mean,
It'll be an opaque, I assume it'll be a 6-foot wood fence, but that'll be maintained by, it'll be on, our property, and it'll be maintained by us.
Commissioner Sharp?
How did you do the calculations on parking in terms of a number of units, the parking, the availability to residents to get to their parking?
When you say the calculations on parking, are you talking about the number of spaces or the distance?
The number of spaces, the distance, the expectation of someone moving in, being able to, how far they can carry their groceries, whether they, there is, it seems to be a fairly dense cluster relying on parking only on public streets.
Yeah, there's public streets and also sort of these kind of mini little parking lots here with the
I'm sorry, I missed that. Where is that?
If you can see here, these are, there's parallel streets along, or parallel parking along these streets,
Yeah.
but then there's also these perpendicular parking in certain spaces. But in terms of the number of spaces, it's been designed to comply with the LDC, and it meets all parking requirements. I don't know. Is there anything?
And the pods are counted as open space?
Yes.
So they're undedicated to anyone. Anyone could use any pod, no matter where they live in the community.
Yes, it's an amenity. We view it as an amenity. It'll be treated the same as the pool or the dog park. Naturally, I think most people would kind of stay in their pod or use their own pod. But if there's a pod down the street that has a fire pit and you want to go use that, you don't have to live in that pod, if that makes sense.
My last question is, have you tested the double-tiered stacking in any of your other communities?
All of our, to the best of my recollection, I believe all of our hamlet projects that are under construction at this time do use this two-tiered.
They use the double stacking?
Yes.
One's on the road and one's on the pod? And they
yes, in some form or fashion. Obviously, it's site-specific, but yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for answering all of our questions.
I have one more.
Oh,
Yeah,
we
don't
missed
go-
one,
don't go
so
too
sorry.
far. I guess
Commissioner Pollak.
I guess this statement is more to the staff, is as you go through the technical review piece of this, post this meeting, I'm kind of where, to echo Commissioner Sharp's point, I look at this and the parking, the way you have described it, it gives me a little cause for concern. And you just kind of added to it when you said, yeah, if you see a fire pit open, down the block, yeah, just go use that or something. And I don't know, I just look at this thing and I see a lot of dwelling and I'm not sure I see enough parking, I guess is the point.
Yeah, and as we go through the technical review, obviously we've got to, as Commissioner Pollak, as much as that's your concern, it's also going to be the concern of our residents. So as we go through the TRC process, we're going to do everything we can to refine that to make parking as convenient for our residents as possible, and particularly minimize those walk, like you said, walking with bags of groceries kind of distance.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy or a great example of, having to park 2 blocks away to, schlep
Absolutely,
your groceries.
and we want to make sure we design, our residents aren't going to like that, and we want to make sure we design.
So I bring it up as much to echo the comments of my peer here, but also to the planning staff, as you go through the technical review, you guys really need to make sure you're comfortable with this parking thing. Okay? So, enough said.
All right, thank you. We will move on to the public hearing. I think that's where we are. Well, the public hearing is open for anyone who is here to speak on this item, and we'll start with anyone who is here to speak in favor of agenda item number 4. All right, anybody who is here to speak in opposition of agenda item number 4?
Hello. My name is Lee Voley, and I recently moved to the Hanover Heights neighborhood from Wilmington, so I've seen a lot of changes in my short life here. And one of the first things I did was look up who owned this property and tried to figure out what it was zoned for. So it was interesting that this just kind of popped up. I don't love the amount of apartments that have come into Wilmington in the past 5 years. It feels like they've popped up over Kerr Avenue, downtown, Oleander, Station Road. And, you know, the multifamily thing that's happening over on this side here, that seems like what Wilmington kind of needs. This seems like, wow. But I guess, you know, seeing some of the plans that they've outlined here, it looks well thought out. This pod space kind of reminds me of what's the Arrive Hotel that's just come in downtown. But the density of that double stack seems a little over the top. I do have a couple questions, really, more than an opposition, is just how does it tie into the Hanover Heights neighborhood? I'm seeing something here. This looks like this is all new roadway. And then being so close to the Cameron Art Museum and the Point and the Cross City Trail, are there any plans for more pedestrian access to those types of, you know, centers going forward? Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Foley. Anyone else here to speak in opposition of agenda item number 4? Anyone here to speak on agenda item number 4 at all? All right, we will, before I close the public hearing, we did have a few comments come in over the website portal. And so we have so much time left in the public hearing, I will read these into the record. Patty Bassett at 3805 Providence Court says, please consider the impact this will have on the neighbors. Brand new apartments are being built across Independence. Think about the infrastructure. If you continue to bow to contractors, you are going to ruin Wilmington. You downsize subdivisions but don't consider the neighbors. Seems like you're concerned about the almighty dollar, not people's lives. Please consider denying the application for a change. Arthur Bullock, 3531 Carolina Beach Road. I'm writing this letter to express my strong opposition to rezoning of the property in question, which is in close proximity to my home. The property was originally zoned for low-density residential development. In the past, Cameron Management requested it was granted a rezoning to O&I and multi-use. Rezoning the property to an even higher density is not the best interest of the adjacent property owners or the citizens of New Hanover County and Wilmington. The road and infrastructure are not equipped to handle this type of high-density residential development. The additional traffic and strain on the infrastructure will be a nuisance and burden to taxpayers. Since I live in the adjacent area, I'm concerned about my quality of life. I'm already experiencing extreme flooding issues due to the overdevelopment of the immediate adjacent properties. Any additional development would worsen an already unbearable situation. High-density development means more people, more traffic, more water runoff, and more impervious surfaces. This is not the best interest of myself or other residents in the area. The development should be halted and the request for rezoning should be denied. If you should desire to have further conversations with me, my number is at the bottom of the letter. It's a shame that the city of Wilmington chooses to hold these meetings on Wednesday nights when a number of long-term Wilmington residents are in church and cannot attend. Jamaica Rennick at 365 Clearbrook Drive. When will the new schools be built, and where are you going to build them in order to provide for the community as a whole? Who is getting financial gain out of the situation? Does the Planning Commission financially gain anything out of all this building? What about the little bit of natural habitat we have left in New Hanover County? Can we save any of that? Or how are you planning to address the traffic and deplorable roads? What are the building strategies used in flood-prone areas like ours when most of the natural habitat that prevents flooding is being mowed down? How am I doing on time, Mr. Satterfield? 3? Okay, I just got this last one I'll read in. From Nicole Yatsonsky at 2710 South 17th, Apartment C. Please do not allow rezoning of this area. There's an immense wildlife population that has already been displaced due to construction of the point and area housing. There is increasingly nowhere for them to go. There is also an extensive amount of traffic that travels in the area between Independence and Carolina Beach Road as is, and more housing here will just intensify the problem. Please focus on infrastructure, school overcrowding, draining issues before allowing rezoning for developments. Yes, there's a housing shortage, but are these homes and apartments actually going to serve the existing population here who generally cannot afford luxury apartments and new housing costs that these always entail? Or is this just to get more out-of-state remote workers who have higher salaries? Please consider the needs of the people who are here and work and pay taxes in the city before the needs of those not yet here. I work at UNCW, one of the higher-paying employers around, and I had difficulty paying the increasing rent costs before I moved into my existing home on South 17th. There's nothing wrong with green space and trees in areas that are not developed. This town does not need to expand beyond its means. It is okay to say no. Please listen to everyone in this city who is tired of seeing unchecked development without the means to support it. We are all drowning in many ways, and it will soon be literally if the flooding and draining issues from overdevelopment are not taken more seriously. You denied the rezoning on Carolina Beach Road not that long ago. Please continue to make more astute decisions like that and do not rezone this. And those were all of the comments that came in, at least as of 3 o'clock today on this item. Agenda item number 4. So the public hearing is closed. All right, would the applicant like to come up and address any of the comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just address a few of the points. I know when we had the neighborhood meeting in January, the overwhelming comment was the neighbors in Hanover Heights did not want the connection at Newkirk. And when we were before City Council in 2013, and it's hard to believe 9 years ago we were here for that, but that was not a requirement of City Council to have that connection. So we're honoring the original approval, and I believe we're also honoring what I can say is probably, I would say 100% of what we heard, that the connection was not wanted. And frankly, we don't need it. Like I said, this site has incredible access when you look at it. When you look at the property in relation to 3 main thoroughfares, South 17th Street, Independence, and then a eventual connection to Carolina Beach Road. It's just rare that you see that in Wilmington. And this has great access. It will have access to South 17th Street and Independence. On the traffic, I think we had a slide, and it's in the staff report. Yeah, I know, I think it's worth pointing out that, as I mentioned, the level of service on both South 17th Street and Independence Boulevard is excellent. And this is a net decrease of traffic compared to over 500,000 square feet of commercial space that could go there. Not only in the AM and the PM peak hours, but overall, the average daily trips are 662 less, and this is staff analysis, but our traffic engineer is here to address any specifics as to the traffic analysis. But to me, that's a pretty significant decrease in traffic, and I would respectfully contend that the project that's before the commission is a much better use of the property than upwards of 500,000 square feet of office space in that vicinity. It's going to be a better transition to Hanover Heights. It's going to meet the housing demand, and as we've mentioned, there's a housing shortage in Wilmington. Jason mentioned it's going to provide a rental component, and I think that's in a variety of housing types. So
It also matches it matches the existing zoning, or the zoning for a neighboring tract. Is that slide? I think that slide's in here.
I know it's in the staff report, but the MD-17 that we're proposing matches MD-17 existing. I think it's Bellingham Park condominium. So we're proposing MD-17 right on 17th Street, which is what the comp plan would call for, next to MD-17, and then the lower density would be a good transition to Hanover Heights. And these aren't, I mean, these are densities that are reasonable and appropriate for the location. The MD-17 is not 17 units an acre. It's actually 14.5 units an acre, so it's not maxed out at MD-17. And the 9.3 units per acre, I believe, for the MD-10 portion, that's very consistent with the surrounding area. And again, all of this, when we talk about density and walkability and all this, I just keep in mind that when the commercial development and the retail component and other parts of Barclay West are developed, and they will be developed, and this will help develop that, this is all going to be walkable to that. It's really going to be, when it's built out, it's going to be pretty incredible. And you can look at what's going on at the Point across the street, across Independence. Very high quality, what they've done there with the movie theater and the restaurants, and all this is going to be right in line with that very high quality development that all of Barclay West is going to provide. So we appreciate your consideration of the request. Thank you.
Commissioner
sorry.
Lennon, we'll
Quick,
stay up here for
just,
questions.
I'm going to try and do this without coughing. She specifically asked about connectivity to the Cross City Trail, and I think not so much within your project, but to the rest of, and you touched on it at the very end, but I don't know, can you add anything to that?
As far as specifics, I know the interconnectivity.
Closer to the mic.
Yeah, as far as specifics, I may defer to Dan as far as the sidewalk and that sort of thing, but I know the connectivity and the sort of access between the two portions of it are important. It's going to be important for the overall development, and it's something that will, certainly be planned for to the extent that it can. I mean, Independence is a major road, as is South 17th Street, but I think what you've seen there with I believe it's the Cross City Trail, the multi-use path there that they've done, it all looks really, it's very well done, and I know that's the quality that they're proposing for all of Barclay West. So I don't know that all the details have been planned out as to how that's going to look at the end of the day, but I know that's important. It's important for Middleburg.
Yeah, we are certainly going to do everything throughout the TRC process to explore, any way we can make sure we can have future connectivity as that develops.
Yeah, Dan, do you want to
But said another way, it sounds like it might be phased with subsequent parts of Barclay that you all won't have anything to do with.
Yes.
In full, but with this plan too, there is a sidewalk along South 17th Street that'll take you to the 17th Street and Independence intersection, which then the Cross City Trail starts once you cross that street. So there will be a sidewalk connection from the South 17th frontage in front of the MD-17 apartments that gets you to that.
So he just knocked it out in 20 seconds.
Sorry, Commissioner Lennon. Thank you. I should have had Dan up here in the first place.
An engineer is always going to be more brief than a lawyer, so.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sure. Commissioner
Yeah,
Pollack?
and it doesn't matter. Matt, if you want to come back up, if I go back to page 5, and it's the estimated trip generation, okay? And it's the traffic thing, and it says existing, general office. What specifically, what existing office space are you referencing that's generating the 4,900?
That's a projection build, that's what's currently entitled to be built out.
So
Under the existing.
that's an estimate of what could be there.
Yes, that is what's legally permitted there now.
So the way I interpret this is existing really should be 0, because there's nothing there. I realize what you're saying it's entitled to, but the realities, and so correct me if I'm wrong, the realities are there's nothing there, so you're really still talking about a 4,200 estimated increase in trips, as opposed to, because the 4904 is an estimate of what could be built. You see where I'm going?
I do. Certainly not arguing with you, Commissioner Pollack. That is a staff-generated table. Yeah,
let me
That's
ask
how
you.
that's how we always compare what's the most intense that could happen under the current versus what are we looking at. That's how we always compare.
I get it,
Okay.
but the reality, and that's fine, that's a great analytical process, but the realities are 4904 is not real. It's just an estimate.
Right, it's
Right?
an
I
estimated
mean-
trip generator.
Yeah, no, I get it. So the reality is, one could argue that the discussion really is you're adding 4,000 trips to what's not there today. I'm just trying to understand the data. You see where I'm going with this? Okay.
Okay.
That helps me understand what it is. Thanks, guys.
This is not for you. But I think, Commissioner Pollack, I think you got to look at it the way it's, we're not measuring it against 0. We have to measure it against something. So what we're measuring it against is today, the property owner could go build 524,136 square feet of office space and not ask for permission other than building permits, right? Mr. Chambers? Okay. So, yeah. So I think, in my mind, this is very useful, particularly, I'm thinking back to the project that we actually recommended denial of for the straight rezoning to multifamily last month or 2 months ago.
Oh, right.
Because of the very purpose that hypothetically they could build up to 270 some odd units there. So
I remember. So, and like I say, I'm not disputing the analytical technique. I get it, because you're right. If left to its own device, bingo. I get that would be the estimate. So understand, I'm just in my mind trying to think.
Public perception.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Sharp.
Perception, is that what you said?
Public perception would be more in line with what I was articulating. They would look at that today and say, yeah, I get it, but, so I'm just trying to help us all educate each other. This has educated me, and anybody watching, this is a learning process. So I get it, but I think Commissioner Sharp makes a good point. There's public perception in this, and I think the general public might look at it the way I was just talking about.
Commissioner Sharp?
I have a question for staff. Anywhere in the UDO, is there a requirement that there be a street frontage for all residential units?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
For the subdivisions.
Does every residential unit have to have access to a public street?
Yes, every development has to have access to a public street. I think you're referencing if they were to subdivide, any new lot would have to have frontage on an approved street, but this is multifamily, so there's really not a lot requirement.
Okay. So, for public services and postal delivery on the pod development, second-tier properties would not have access to a public street. So they would be delineated as A or B, something 201B or something like that?
I would assume so. I'd have to probably defer to the applicant as to how they plan to manage that type of thing on site.
Fine.
In our mind, it's you're allowing a number of units in a multifamily development. It's just a different housing type. So if you lived in an apartment complex, you wouldn't technically have frontage on a public street. You would just walk down to where your mail kiosk is or to where your compactor is for trash services. This is just taking those units and spreading them out in different housing types, which is something this comprehensive plan would support.
Okay, so let me follow up on your suggestion. Can I ask the applicant, how would you identify, delineate for public safety reasons the second-tier units around the pods?
The units will be individually numbered or labeled as such. In terms of the package delivery and mail delivery, it will be, we're going to have a package center that's located at the amenity center, and then there'll be mail kiosks, so you don't have individual mailboxes.
They won't have individual mailbox. You'll go to a central
Yes.
mail facility.
And that's per the U.S. That's the Postal
Yeah,
Service
that's fine.
requirement.
If I'm not mistaken, this is Ron over here, if I'm not mistaken, the post office is requiring that anyway, even for single-family subdivisions. They're not necessarily wanting to do individual delivery of houses, they're requiring the kiosk. We choose not to provide standards for the kiosk because we want the applicant to figure out how to do that in the best way forward. A lot of communities require minimum parking standards for a kiosk. We want the residents to walk to the kiosk and get their mail instead of pull the car there to get it. My mom lived in a community that has a kiosk, and a lady went to get to her mail, and a car backed into her as she was getting her mail. So, we want the flexibility left at the developers' hands on how a kiosk would be handled. They will work with our addressing coordinator to make sure they're adequately addressed. Our addressing coordinator is corresponding, communicating with our fire services, emergency services, et cetera, to make sure that the addressing scheme makes sense from an emergency services perspective. You touched on the solid waste. The city would not provide solid waste in a community like this. In most cases, you would be contracting out with a private firm in a lot of cases, I believe.
Yeah, we're going to have valet trash, so the residents will put their trash outside their door, and we will pick it up. So you're not going to have to walk to a dumpster in either phase of the community.
One last question while you're there. Did you all consider anything less dense than this configuration? You seem to have maxed out the full site.
I think we designed to really to the LDC and consistent with the comp plan. As we've gone through iterations, I'm sure maybe the number of units have changed somewhat, but we're confident in our design and sort of the way that this is laid out. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Well, quantifiably, Mr. Nichols mentioned earlier that they hadn't reached the maximum density that the district allows. So that's, if that quantifiable answer helps at all.
There are so many options. Thank you.
All right. We had the public hearing already, right? Where are we? Commissioners, I'd like to hear Commissioner Bowman on any comments about the site plan that we haven't already gone over.
Well, we've had a lot of discussion of the second tier thing, which I sort of first mentioned. I think it's very similar to cottage community that we reviewed earlier, at a little bit larger scale and more density. So, I'm sort of intrigued by this as a new sort of housing product type on the HD10 side of things. Don't really have any concerns about the HT17, and I'm intrigued to sort of see how the HT10 might play out at this scale. So it's sort of new for me.
Thanks. This is a tough one for me. I know several people had concerns about the site plan. Several of us had some concerns about it. I like the density, actually. I think it's a great location for it, you couldn't ask for any more connectivity with the main roads that aren't level of service F, the ones that have room to grow, even with the traffic counts that we see added to it. The issue that I'm struggling with is that they mentioned the location is close to a hospital, and which is a great employer. We also have police, firefighters, none of these people that are critical to the work that we do, I mean, to our community, to our livelihoods, to our lives really, can really even afford to live here. Most of the public servants and healthcare workers live outside of the city, and they serve us without being able to live near us. And so it's troubling to me that we are missing an opportunity for some workforce housing, and I'd love to explore the incentive there, and if it wasn't appealing, if it didn't work for you, why, so we can address that as a city, because that's really important for us moving forward, is to have housing for everybody that works here. And the closer we have people to, as you know, because you're doing these developments, the closer we have people living to where they work, the better our traffic is going to be in general. So,
Madam Chair, I agree with you. I think that if they were to pursue workforce housing, they would be allowed greater density and greater height, so you could really have a much more dense product in the final analysis, which maybe adds to some of the neighborhood concerns on traffic or whatever. But yeah, I agree with your comment.
I was just going to try to echo and jump in on your point, is because the one term I didn't hear tonight, and I've heard ever since I've joined the commission, most often used term is affordable housing. You just articulated really good examples of that need. So does this project enter into that, or try to enter into that affordable housing kind of structure, and the guarantees that that whole mathematical formula that goes along with that? And it's funny, I haven't heard that mentioned at all, but you raise a very good point. We have a lot of people we have numbers of people that support this city that don't live in this city because they can't afford to. So I asked the question, I mean, in support of what you've been saying, why wouldn't this be an affordable housing project? I'm sorry?
Yeah, the incentive is, 10% for, I think it's 20 years for unlimited density, height. So there's some incentives built in to help overcome the rent control, if you will. Were you going to say something, Mr. Chambers?
I was going to help finish your thought, but you finished it before I had a chance, so you nailed it.
Well, and it's not, the state of North Carolina is not permit us to force you to do anything, which I think is the American way, to not force any affordable housing. But it seems like we're missing an opportunity to at least explore it with you. It's hard for me to support moving it forward without knowing that was even considered.
I think if I could address that, I do understand your concerns, and from our perspective, we sort of had a balancing act of, if in order to make those numbers work, like you said, we'd have to increase the higher density, which is really not consistent with, we feel, with the neighborhood and what is, we tried to address the neighbors' concerns and kind of sort of keep the density to a number that sort of fits both with the comprehensive plan and also in the greater area. So,
Commissioner Sharp?
So if you wanted to make a commitment to affordable housing, you don't have to change your design. You can effectively do it by commitment. You could commit to 5% Section 8. You could commit to an allotment of your rental units to affordable housing as part of a good neighbor. This will be the largest project that's come before the planning board without the consideration of affordable housing. So accepting your design, if your heart's in the right place, there still are ways to meeting the community needs.
Yeah, I think the constraint we have is really if we increase density on the site, we wouldn't be able to meet the parking requirements. So,
Well, you may not be meeting the parking requirement. You're legally meeting the parking requirement, but you may not be meeting the parking needs anyway. So if you're willing to be a good neighbor in the community, you can find a way of bringing in a 5% affordable housing component to both sections of your opportunity.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Lennon?
part of me fears we're getting close to the third rail, but I think the most intriguing part of what you said was the third rail of being basically saying, we think you should do this. I don't think we can ignore the business reasons that led to the decisions that they made. That being said, the most intriguing question I think you asked was, throughout this process, what happened in terms, did staff explain the incentives? Were they sufficient? Or was there a limiting factor, some of which he's put before us? In the bigger picture, you know, I mean, I look at this project, another one that we recently did, which was significant, and it wasn't this big, where they did incorporate it and were able to get the density. So is there an issue with our process? That to me is the bigger question. This will not be the last several hundred unit project that we see.
And I would just to add to it, I know it's not obviously specific to this site, but at Middleburg, we have an entire affordable housing division, and we have developed and own and operate several entirely affordable housing communities throughout the country. So it's a little bit of a balancing act for us on that front as well.
So the ones that are exclusively affordable housing, they get the subsidies, and you get LIHTC probably, and
yeah, I mean, it's a different product type,
whole different.
It's kind of apples and oranges, but I want to stress that, that this is an issue that Middleburg is aware of. We are working, we are working to incorporate that. It's not in this particular project.
Anybody else? Commissioner Pollack?
Would you consider, as you go back through and I don't know if this is part of the technical review committee or not, so Brian, keep me honest here. As you go back through the final site plans, the final checkoffs on it, would you commit to going through a process of assessing, some percentage of affordable housing, just because, you made the comment that you have a tightrope to walk? Well, so do we. We owe it to the public that we represent to ask the questions we're asking. So, would you commit to working with the staff some type of an evaluation that says, yeah, we went through the process, we considered this, we could or could not do this? I mean, I think that's fair to at least ask the question, and I would.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had a very collaborative relationship with staff throughout the entire process, and that's certainly something we would consider. I can't commit to anything particular. We've got to do the analysis, but certainly it's something that that we're willing to explore.
Oh, Commissioner Bowman, thank you.
I think there's an opportunity for that, with these, this cottage approach. Some of those, whether they be the second tier homes or sprinkled in there, you can have some smaller structures that might help fit into the box. And maybe not by virtue of meeting the full pro forma, but lower rental costs for lower building size or square footage size. So I think there's an opportunity for that, and maybe the applicant between now and City Council can address that just as a goodwill gesture. I'm comfortable enough that I could motion at this time but I don't want to short circuit any further, more robust conversation with the commission.
Commissioner Woodruff?
I agree with this notion there's an opportunity. I am hesitant because of the aspect we can't force them to do anything. But I could see a motion along the lines that it's our recommendation that between, assuming we approve this, between now and when they go to city council, that they do sit down with staff, discuss the possibilities of affordable housing aspects, whether you can or you can't. We can't force them to do that. They say forget it, and they go to city council, and city council looks at that recommendation, and they said, well, then we're not going to do this. If you're not going to play with us, we're not going to play with you. But I could see that as a recommendation on our part for them to take that step with staff to look at the issue. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you've done your best effort at trying it. You said you've got another division somewhere that, knows how to talk the language about affordable housing, so give it a shot, see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a fair compromise. I'm sorry, J.C.
In the beginning, when the first time I asked if you'd considered it, you didn't really say that you had. So now that you've explained that you have considered it and it didn't work out financially, I'd love to explore that a little bit more, outside of this meeting.
Sure.
To see what would entice a development like this that has a little more room to absorb some of those costs than some of the smaller ones we see coming through here. So hopefully you will help us grow and improve what we do and offer incentives that you just can't resist to build workforce housing for the hospital workers and the waitresses that are, all these people are so close to, your homes. And so it would be just wonderful if we could work that out to, as a long-term, as a city, not just, on this site so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're certainly open to, having discussion with city council on that and planning staff as well.
Okay. Commissioner Pollack, did you have?
No, I was just going to piggyback on Commissioner Woodruff. I think, maybe a motion to do whatever also include, I'm sorry?
Mike.
Okay. Again, I apologize. I struggle with people not hearing me. That's so new to me in my life. No, I think Commissioner Woodruff makes I believe his point is you probably could make a motion to move forward with, conditional approval item number 10, something along the line to ask them to, just to go through the analysis with the staff.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Lennon?
I would vote against saying that that's a condition. I think we make the recommendation, and that's just my 2 cents. But I also think, and I think they've expressed a willingness to do that regardless. But
yeah.
I also have a question. Did you or anybody in your organization talk with staff about this prior to submittal?
I don't know. I can't say I spoke specifically. I don't know if anyone.
Mr. Chambers?
Staff brings up affordable housing, and with every project that comes through the door, in some situations, it makes sense for the density they're looking for. In this case, the density that they needed was met by the by right density that allowed in the MD10 and MD17. So when you add this workforce component, it allows you to go up to 36 units per acre. They didn't need that, so they didn't pursue it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree that there's not a lot of meat to a condition that's, I wouldn't see that would be an appropriate place to put a condition like that. Right.
Yeah, and I understand, there's a question about whether or not it needs to specifically be a condition, but, I'm here to represent Middleburg. We've done work in this community. I'm here committing to it, so, we're going to do what we say. So we'll commit to it whether or not it makes it into a condition.
I don't believe we should. I don't believe it should be a condition. I think it should be step to the plate. You've heard us talk about the need. It's a nice design. We're supportive of your going forward. What we're looking for is for you to consider mixed income, mixed use in this, your broad concept, not another limited housing opportunity that's fixed. be experimental. Let's move on. You're here for a while. I don't think it should be a condition. I think it should be a moral opportunity.
Understood.
It's nicely stated.
So,
Is that, were you wrapping that? Okay.
okay.
Commissioner Commissioner Bowman? I believe you
Well,
had it.
all right.
What's the
Madam
will of the
Chair,
commission?
Then I'll take a shot. I've moved to approve agenda item 4, which is for 3152 South 17th Street, rezoning from ONI-CD to MD10CD and MD17CD. And this request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington, Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and the Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable in the public interest, and that the proposal of the subject property would allow for additional housing and density near services in a manner that is consistent with the surrounding area and adopted plans. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends its approval of this request, including conditions in the staff's report. And I think there are 9 conditions on page 12. And aside from the motion, I would just personally request that the applicant study the things that we've asked and bring it forward to City Council. We're just a recommending body, so there's my motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Bowman has moved to approve agenda item number 4. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is that Commissioner Pollock? And we will do a roll call vote.
So, point of clarity, what was added beyond the qualification, the conditions? Just a,
Nothing, I believe. It was just just a personal recommendation. Sorry. That was really loud.
Yeah, I think it was just a recommendation that they do that, aside from it being a hard condition. And we're a recommending body to City Council. They have the power to exercise, the thumbs up or down. So I feel that's enough for my motion. If it fails, then we can try a different motion.
Everybody know what we're voting on?
If I could add, it may be,
Commissioner Woodruff?
I was just thinking it's going down as Bruce's recommendation. Each of us could follow up in his recommendation as a side to the motion, so that it's not a part of the motion. It's just a recommendation. He said it was his personal recommendation, and I will agree. It'll be my personal one, too.
What do you think of that, Mr. Attorney?
I think Commissioner Bowman can state his personal recommendation. I don't think that he made it part of his motion. I think his motion was exclusive of that.
Great. So if we all, if any of us also individually wanted to express our personal recommendations, you wouldn't have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that as long as it's clear that that's not part of the motion or what you're voting on.
Sounds great. Thank you. All right. We're ready for a roll call vote on this. Commissioner Bowman?
Aye.
Commissioner Lennon?
Aye. Do I say it now?
Sure.
And by the way, I strongly recommend that the applicant discuss affordable housing opportunities with City Council and staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyle, aye. And I also personally recommend exploration of workforce housing opportunities and how the city might beef up our incentives. Commissioner Pollock?
I vote aye, and I also personal recommendation along with my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Sharp?
I vote aye, and I recommend that you look at mixed income, mixed use as a way of being part of our community.
Commissioner Woodruff?
I vote aye, and I follow, too, as a personal recommendation for participating in discussions on affordable housing.
Thank you. All right, the motion is unanimous, 7-0. Oh, excuse me, 6-0. We had a recusal. And thank you for your participation and for your commitment to our region. We really do believe your product is desperately needed in the community, whether at any price point, really, and would be certainly icing on the cake to explore the workforce housing opportunities with you. So thank you very much. And we are welcome back, Commissioner Goins. We're now starting agenda item number 5, and I think we have a request. Who's doing that? Commissioner, okay, Mr. Attorney, request for the Land Development Code Amendment.
Madam Chair, if you'd entertain a motion to continue, that's coming from the legal department. We need additional time to review. It's basically complete, but it's not quite ready for Planning Commission or Council, so we're requesting a month continuance on that.
Okay, so continuance to a date certain of July 6th?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the request to continue to the next meeting, to our next scheduled meeting. Is that enough time?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We have a second?
Second.
Who was that? Who seconded?
I did.
Commissioner Woodruff, thank you. And we will do a voice vote on this. All in favor of continuing agenda item number 5 to date certain of July 6th?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Great work tonight, everybody. Do we have any other items from the commission?
No.
Except Commissioner Sharp requests a new chair.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Lennon?
I alluded to this on one of the items, just a request, a number of the comments that were in the online comment section were based on wrong assumptions. And so I don't know, and there's no date on them. So I don't know if there's a way to reach back out to those people or to update, excuse me, whatever they're seeing online, because I think there were 19 comments on, and almost all of them thought that there was going to be a multifamily project there. Cedar Avenue. Yeah, thank you. So just a request.
Well, you know, John, that brings up a good process question, because those comments were based on what they heard or learned as they went to a community meeting, right? So if the applicant made such a substantive change to what they came into that meeting with, is there some way in the process that says they have to go back and help those homeowners? Because I understand exactly where you're coming from, so who owns that responsibility to go back and clarify that?
That's why I got confused, because I asked her the question when they made the decision to switch, and she said prior to application, I think, right?
That's what she said.
That is
And
what
you
she
got
said.
to remember
Yeah.
that the community meeting is required prior to them submitting the application. They made the change. They noted the changes that they made. I believe it was noted, I believe, in the case summary or somewhere. But they're required to submit, along with their application, the notifications that went out to the neighbors. So you also got a copy of the minutes of what they discussed. And I believe it would say on on those minutes, we made the following changes. You got a copy of the notification letter that they sent, as well as the site plan that they sent. And in this case, the sign that they posted on the property, because the sign is a requirement now. So the applicant fulfilled their obligations. We can look at the dates. I believe most of them came in the last few days, and we can reach out to them, let them know that the plan has been changed to the 9 single-family homes, I believe. And I believe a lot of that was, I believe staff had a lot of phone calls from the Cedar Avenue area, if I'm not mistaken. O'Brien talked to a few people in the last couple of days. So we let them know. So I understand the confusion, but you got to remember that the applicant is required to show what they presented, what they talked about. So that adds to the confusion. We'll see if we can do better on that perspective and make it clear but a lot of folks aren't reading the case summaries online. They're knowing what they talked about 3 months ago, 2 months ago, whatever it was. You saw the same thing with the annexation or Middle Sound Loop Road packet last month.
Well, and I think, like I said last month, it's not our responsibility to spoon feed people, but I just want to make sure our process is good. And having a date on those would, I don't know if that's possible.
I mean, I know it's a date on what I can see on the folder. You may not get that on what you see.
Yeah, we
So-
can't see the date.
So I know like it's dated when we file it. Like when we archive it and put it in our project folder, it has a date on the.
The applications are typically dated, received when we get them. The community meeting report should be dated when they put it together.
You're talking about the public comments.
Oh, I apologize.
All public comments can only be submitted between the day the adjacents go out, which is approximately 14 days prior to the meeting. So the comments all come in within 2 weeks of receiving this meeting. And all of the updated application information is also available on our website, on the main page, the last items that have been submitted to us. So when they go to the website, they can see the most current information that we've received and submit a comment, but it has to be within 2 weeks before the meeting.
But if I understand you correctly, I'm sorry to belabor this, but because particularly last month, I felt bad. There were so many people, there were 200 and some. Okay. So if they write this within 2 weeks prior to the meeting, you said? And then they never touch it after that, how do they know, unless they go back to the website, that something's completely different?
If I can add on what Amy's saying, they received a notice. A lot of folks receive a notice. Remember, we're providing a notice within 300 feet of the property. And in the Cedar Avenue case, as that was the one I think was the most confusing, it said 9 single-family or 9 lots. It didn't say 21 townhomes or whatever their previous approval was. That the notice that went out, the agenda is just like your agenda. It says 9 single-family lots for Cedar Avenue. So I don't know what the person does once they receive that notice, if they read it or if they say, oh, here's somewhere I can place a comment, because that's when we open it up is when they receive the letter.
Okay.
So I can't make somebody read something that we send them. So, but we can look on our end to see if there's a better way to communicate. Please note that there were modifications made since they had their community meeting. To answer Mr. Pollack, your question, in this particular case, it was less dense. They went from the townhome project to 9 single-family lots. So I don't know that staff is going to advise, we're not going to accept this, you need to go back to community meeting. If it was the other way, we probably would have suggested you need to really go talk to the community about increasing the density. At the end of the day, though, it's up to Planning Commission in this review or City Council when it gets to them to determine whether or not the information discussed, et cetera, satisfy the code requirements for that community meeting. So it's a very subjective process.
And to Commissioner Lennon's point, the topic that he raises, and not to kick a dead horse, we're going to continually learn as a commission and as a staff communication. I mean, we're just in an environment where, in the case of Cedar Avenue, it's a very dynamic process. I mean, they had a meeting, the applicant significantly changed. We're going to figure this out, but I think it's a good point that we keep challenging ourselves to just when, it's like I tell a lot of people, just when you think you've communicated enough, you haven't.
But you're right.
And it's that simple.
We notify 300 feet, somebody 305 feet are complaining they didn't get a notice.
Yeah, exactly.
We changed our process to require the community meeting before the application.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because we heard from the community, we heard from the Planning Commission, we heard from City Council. How do we get out in front of this? How do we get people notified sooner? Well, we're doing that now, and some of you, and maybe all of you, have received some emails recently about another project that we haven't even received an application for yet.
Yeah.
And we're getting questions on the other end, well, how can they even be doing this if you don't have an application? So it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't
Oh, it is.
situation that we're in. We're
That's
trying to
public
get out
service.
in front of it.
That is public service. That
So,
is well
you're
stated.
right, we're gonna learn
We're
from
gonna
our
learn.
mistakes. We can do a better job trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Your point about the traffic information.
Sure.
Can we be better, or can we articulate better what it says?
Well, and the only reason I brought that up, and then I will shut up.
No, you're good.
The only
understand
reason I
your
brought
concern.
that up is because if I didn't sit with this group of people and learn, and I mean that sincerely, I learn every time we're together. You know, if I was sitting out there in that green chair, you know, I wouldn't know, and I would ask that question from the perspective that I asked it.
Absolutely.
I get the analytical technique. I mean,
Absolutely.
it makes perfect sense.
Oh, and sitting here, and I'm sure Pat can hear it, some of
Yeah.
the snicker sometimes in the audience, you may not be able to hear that when a
So-
comment is made, it's, you know, it's an insignificant amount of traffic increase. We hear that sometimes with the
So
neighbors.
my periphery vision is giving me some indications that it's time to shut up, so.
No, I hear you.
You got it, Ron, thank you.
Yeah, we understand, but we'll do better on communicating on our end as well.
Anything from the staff?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I don't know if Brian had anything. I just want to talk real quickly about some staffing. Some of you may have, and hopefully all of you have seen the notice that went out a week or two ago about we have a new planning director that will start with the city on July 5th. Her name is Linda Painter. She's coming from Mansfield, Connecticut. So she will actually, July 5th is her first day with the city. So your next planning commission meeting, I'm assuming she'll be here for that. We have not talked to her at this point, so I don't know exactly what her plans are. We also, as you know, Christine Hughes had left the city, took a job in the private sector, but we have filled her position with Nicole Smith, who used to work for the city, and so she's coming back to fill Christine Hughes' position, a senior planner. She starts on Monday. And just another things we don't really talk about too much with you guys, though, but we have had a zoning officer position. They're the ones who go out and do inspections on sites to make sure that the site plan is compliant with what has been approved, or making sure before the certificate of occupancy is issued by New Hanover County Building Inspections that the home complies with our setbacks or whatever. We've had a vacant position in that section for about 8 or 9 months now. Still hasn't been filled. So just trying to find good applicants for those positions. So it's something I think you guys should be aware of, that we're constantly moving, but hopefully we're starting to see some opportunities for filling staff. And one I forgot to mention was we also are losing Gilbert Combs. He submitted his resignation yesterday, actually, and he's going to go work for Brunswick County. His last day with us will be next Friday, on June 10th. So we're not the only departments that are facing vacancies, and we're doing the best with what we can with what we have, and try to actively recruit people. The other thing is I got an email just before this meeting. Actually, one of many people got the email, but that's relevant to this board, is we've been asked by, I believe, the Appointments Committee. Came up at the budget work session. I mentioned this to a couple folks in the back room earlier. What is the time commitment for each one of our boards and commissions? So I'm going to ask Amy sometime by the end of the week to send an email to each one of the planning commissioners for you to tell us what you believe the monthly time commitment is to serve on the planning commission. I believe they want to use that as someone is considering what boards or commissions to apply to serve on with the city, just so they have an idea of what that time commitment is. Tonight's meeting has been close to 4 hours, but not every meeting is that. But I also know you have prep time.
Yeah, we do prep and drive-bys.
Drive-bys, reviewing
Agenda
emails,
briefing.
whatever the case may be. So if y'all can give us an idea and just respond to Amy on what you believe your personal time commitment is, and we'll average it out or whatever. We won't say JC's time is this, and Mr. Pollock's is this, and Mr. Lennon's is this, but we'll just kind of average out as a ballpark.
You want us to average our own too? Because, some months if we just have 1 or 2 items.
Yeah, it could just be a gut feeling. I mean, I'm not asking you to go back and, okay, well, that meeting.
I'll check my
this long,
time
that meeting
sheet.
was that long. Just, on average, your meeting might be 3 hours, and then, on average, you're putting another, 3 hours into the, whatever it is.
Okay.
Just, if you don't mind. We have to get that information back to the clerk on June 16th. So we'll probably ask you sometime mid-next week or the end of next week if you can get back with us on that. But I'll have Amy send out a
Okay.
reminder.
Yeah,
anyway.
Ron,
Thanks for the heads up.
On a similar point, my term comes to, September's going to be my last meeting. 1 year plus 3 plus another 3, so I've sort of hit the wall. Hopefully, there are applicants already in the pot being considered by somebody to replace. And it is my hope that there would be somebody within the design community in there under consideration.
Sure, and I'm not sure when the appointments what's your time in July? Is that right?
Last meeting is September.
September, okay. And my understanding is that you serve until you are replaced, or your opportunity to serve. So if they don't fill your position until November,
Well,
you're
it
allowed
used to be
serve.
that they forced Richard and Jeff off
Right.
because, so is there a change of policy?
Oh, they were
I
replaced.
believe they replaced them in time. in
Oh,
that
they were
particular
replaced.
case.
Okay, well, let me.
Yeah, there was no vacancy.
Let me rephrase the question. I think I'm done. So
Sure.
hopefully somebody's working on replacing me because I
Yeah.
can't continue.
That I'm not sure, but
You've served us very well, and we really rely on your
I know I'm
expertise.
allowed
I agree
now,
about
so,
your.
Please find somebody else.
I understand, and I agree, having someone with design community
Agreed.
would be beneficial. And the appointments committee works, they meet monthly. I'm just not aware of what
Sure,
committee,
yeah.
what commissions they're
I know
looking at each
council
time.
has a couple of people appointed to that and they can take, hopefully they're thinking on that.
Sure. I've spoken enough now, so.
All right. Anything else from staff? Commissioner Lennon, do you have a motion to make?
Madam Chair, with the understanding that we all serve until replaced, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
And I second.
We'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.